Okay. Testing test. Hopefully the mic is working. Should be working. Welcome back to another live stream. We're here every week, Sunday, 11:30, except last week because I wasn't here. But we're here again this week. So we're going to wait until we get some people in here, start asking some questions. Feel free to say hi. We got lots of things going on. So many things, too many things. But that's okay. Let's see, any interesting comments recently? Questions? I don't see much. Okay. Timberland is here. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing? Hope everything's good. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know if you can hear me as well. Should be working. I'm so busy, you guys. Trying to do too much. Awkward beginning because there are no recent questions. Just some really great comments. You guys are awesome. But let's see. Okay, what can we talk about? So upcoming, we have we're going to start doing the listening analysis lessons. First one's coming up pretty soon. I had a couple people send me their own sentences, so what I'm probably going to do for that is everybody who submitted the sentence that I suggested, that'll all go into one video, and I'll just analyze everybody. And then the people that send me their own sentences within that same submission period, I'll make one video for all of those sentences. So it'll be 2 videos. Maybe I'll make it into one, but it'd probably be better to be 2. And then I got the present perfect contractions lesson coming up. So I know some of you are probably waiting for that. It's going to be a whole series. We're going to do the past perfect, future perfect, conditionals with would. Mr. Big or Go Home. I always want to say Mr. Big or Mr. Go Home for some reason. Mr. Big or Go Home, welcome. I am pretty good. Just trying to do lots of things. Very busy. Hope you're doing well. I don't know if you've made any progress with what we talked about before. I know it's a slow thing, but hopefully we're moving in the right direction. What else we got coming up? So yeah, the phase 0 ear training lesson. You guys probably have seen a couple posts about that. It is a nightmare on my end because I made a post yesterday saying I think I figured it out, and I didn't figure it out. I'm pretty sure I got it now. I'm not going to go into all the details of why I was trying to do it. It was problematic, but I think I found a good way to focus on the sound quality instead of going through like every last detail with every last exercise and every last direction. In phase 0, we're going to be exploring the quality a bit more, and there will also be some special minimal pairs for that within that same lesson. The way that I'm going to do it now, the raw footage from the way I was going to do it before was like 49 minutes. Of course, that would be cut down, but it still would probably be like at least 20 minutes long at the end. And the way that I plan to do it now is probably going to be a lot shorter. So that's also going to be good for you guys. Not like crazy short, but it's going to be more efficient for what I was trying to do. So still don't have any questions. Come on, guys. This doesn't work without your questions. That's tomorrow. Okay. Looks like I have 3 classes tomorrow. Yeah. Alrighty. Anyway, and then we have the phase 2 lesson coming up, phase 2 group 1, which is a massive lesson. 8 pages of text that I have down, but there's going to be lots of great stuff in there. I don't know if I should cut it up or just have it be like one big thing. There's going to be timestamps, so I mean, like, I don't recommend you jump around. It's all set up for a reason, in a particular order. But if you need to like get to a particular point, like the ah sound, you can just like skip to that part. So I think it'll be manageable. But that video is probably going to be at least a half hour long, like minimum. Might even be closer to an hour long. So lots of good stuff coming in that. And then, of course, I have the master speaking technique, which I am still testing in German. So it's going quite well, which is interesting. But yeah, the best part of that technique is you don't even need a partner. You do need somebody to get feedback from. That's going to be part of the process. But you don't have to actually need like a teacher or an exchange partner. Lily is here. Long time no see. Welcome. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm just kind of talking to myself here because nobody has questions. Looks like the connection was having a little issue there. But yeah, so that's coming up. Timberland, welcome. Thank you. Well, not welcome, but your question is very welcome. Let's go and throw this up. Does it really important? So is it really important, right? So do goes with verbs. So like, does it work, right? But something is important. That's a state. It's either important, it is important, or it is not important. Importance doesn't do anything, right? So is it really important? I like the word order. You got the word order right. So good job there. Is it really important to round our lips for the R sound when we pronounce it at the beginning of a word? No. In fact, you shouldn't be rounding the lips. At least when I think of rounding, I think of doing this. The lips can come up this way. I guess you can also call that rounding. I wouldn't call that rounding, but just so we're on the same page. You definitely should not be doing something like that, like or no, it's not part of the sound at all, like for any native as far as I know. But it is a very common thing to do this so the lips don't round, they come sort of up and maybe out a little bit. Is it required? Absolutely not. It's the same thing. What I have noticed with some students is if they add the lips, they sound a little better. And I think the reason for that is because when they do that, something shifts slightly here for those people. This doesn't happen for all my students, but just the students that it does affect. I think when they do that, it shifts something here that gets them into a little bit of a better position to make a clearer, better R sound. But it's not a required part of the sound, no. It is a very common thing that natives do, though. We also do that with the SH sound. It's exactly the same. Sh, 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 we do that with the sound, like in book. It's never a required part of the sound. Sh, sh, Just like you don't have to say E, you can just do E. The lips, technically speaking, you never actually have to use the lips for any sound ever. Maybe with the P, B, and M, because we have to actually close the lips. But when it comes to the vowels, you never actually have to use the lips. Now, that being said, the oo, the o, and the ow, I guess we could also say the oi and or. Those ones, um, the only way that you would not use the lips is if you're speaking very lazily and quickly. Even then, we'll probably still get a little bit, so I don't recommend trying not to do the lips. It's just it is technically possible in some way to never actually use the lips for the vowels. Um, so anyway, can't wait for your. Let's pull this up here. I can't wait for your next video about not being afraid to practice because since I mostly speak with non-natives, I'm afraid I can reinforce my mistakes. Yeah, it's a very common problem. That's part of why I'm developing this technique. Um, so we can talk about that for a second. Now the post that I made that I saw your comment on this morning, uh, it's I mean it will help with the fear. I was I talk to myself in my head a lot, and it's just how I think. I like to have debates in my head and things like that. So I'll get these little monologues going about this point or that point. Sometimes it's about the nature of reality. Sometimes it's about language learning. um, welcome, Joe. 1 minute. I'll get to you in a second here. Thank you for the question. Um, but anyway, I happened to be thinking because since I am testing this thing, it's kind of speaking is kind of on my mind, and that pops up in my head every once in a while for different skills, but especially for speaking. And I was thinking like, oh, okay, well, what are the reasons why people are afraid to speak? And those are like the two core reasons why what I could think of. You could even say maybe they're the only reasons. And so I wanted to post, just to think about that. I'm like, hey, I could make a piece of content. Let's post this. This will be useful for some people. Um, and then at the end, I was like, oh yeah, I'm making a technique to actually improve your speaking and to master speaking skills. So I sort of like tag that at the end. So the lesson itself isn't about like dealing with the fear, but it is going to help with that. Um, as I said, I'm testing it on myself right now in German. And some of the pieces, it's what it is. It's not like something that's necessarily like everything's new, right? Like think of when the iPhone was made, right? It's like all the pieces of the iPhone, like GPS, camera, phones, like a cell phone, like they already existed, but then the iPhone sort of like put everything together in one device, right? And I'm not trying to compare my technique to the iPhone. It's not going to be, like the best thing since sliced bread, which is an idiom we have, but uh I really think it's going to be useful. Now it's not like a silver bullet that just like, oh, you do this once and now you're like fluent, right? Because there's nothing like that, unfortunately. Um, but it is designed in a very special way to um, help you get over the fear of speaking, help you actually develop your speaking skills without ever having to like practice with a teacher or with an exchange partner. You never have to actually do a conversation with anybody for this technique. That's one of the really great things about it. You can do it completely from home. You are going to have to get feedback. That is part of the process. And you can just like, if you have a friend who is a native speaker, they have to be a native speaker. If you have a friend who's a native speaker and they want to help you out, you could do it that way. Or I'm going to show you how you can go on like italki, just find like a cheap tutor and say, there's like a little script I'm going to give you for the instructions of what they need to do to give you feedback. It's very specific. And then you just like, send what you need to send to them, which I'm going to talk about in the technique along with those instructions. Pay them, whatever they're charging, um, and then they give you the feedback. Is they're going to be giving you a recording and a corrected written version, and again, more details in the lesson coming up. And you're then going to use that. So now you have a corrected version that you're going to be working with, and then there's like some other steps and other things built around it that are going to help you. And it's designed where you're going to focus on one topic each week. You can go at your own pace, but it's kind of designed to fit within a week. And you want to do that for at least 4 weeks. And you want to pick a topic so you can start thinking about this now before I release the lesson. You want to pick a topic that is very specific, right? So if you like sports, that's That's not specific. That's like a category. If you like soccer within sports, that's more specific. That does work, but preferably it would be even more specific than that. Like how to play soccer, right? Like how to's are really, really good for this technique because they're very specific and step by step. Um, but anyway, that you're going to see more in the lesson. It's all going to make sense and whatever. But you want to pick a topic that's very specific. You want to pick a topic that is relevant to you. Okay. If your speaking skills are already more advanced, you can branch out into things that are maybe less relevant to you that you just want to improve your broad general speaking skills. But it's designed, even if you have zero speaking skills, like it's designed for you. But it can also help intermediate speakers. And then you want it to be something that you're very familiar with in your native language. And I cannot emphasize that enough because that's going to be the secret bridge that makes this work. If it's something you're not familiar with in your native language and you don't know say like, for example, if you like chess, right? Or if you don't like chess, but you choose chess as your topic, you don't know the names of the pieces, you don't know the names of the moves. But if you're very familiar with that, even though it's a very specific thing that you may not ever actually talk to somebody about, that doesn't matter. Um, that's one of the great things about this as well is you don't have to pick a topic. Like you don't have to like do small talk or talk about the weather or pick something that is like going to be like in a conversation or something that's completely irrelevant. You can skip all of that. um, and it'll all make sense, as they said in the lesson. But you can start thinking about that now. What topic would you want to or topics, you can get a list of topics that you might want to use for the technique. And then I also I have to test this as well, but while I'm testing this technique, I got an idea. So this technique is called the automatic flow technique. And then I got an idea while I was testing that for another technique that actually amplifies that technique called the expand and spiral technique. Um, and the steps, the stuff in both techniques are based off of my own experience, based off of ideas I've gotten from polyglots. There's a couple little exercises like the reverse translation technique from Luca Lampariello that's in the master speaking automatic flow technique. So I'm going to make a lesson about that as well. And anyway, it's all coming. It'll make sense. Right now, it's kind of like pieces. You're just like, what's going on? I know it's confusing, but start thinking about your topics. Joe, how do you pronounce R, air, ear, or Okay, so good question. I have a whole lesson on this. I can actually share that here with you. Unfortunately, it's not a simple short answer that I can just say this is how they're pronounced, because English doesn't work that way. We have a horrible spelling system. Let me bring up my content here. I will briefly discuss this, but I'm going to send you the lesson so you can just watch the lesson. Let's see. Vowel spelling patterns and pronunciation. Get shareable link. Paste. Okay. This through. So there are exceptions to everything with the pronunciation of R. The general patterns, I'll just give you a little blanket overview here. If it's spelled ER, IR, or UR, okay, and there's no silent letter after, because we like to put silent E's or maybe some other silent letter in order to change the vowel before. So if it's IR and there's a silent E, like in fire, that'll actually change it into I plus er. But if it's just ER, IR, UR, you don't see any other letters or anything like that. Most of the time, these three spellings are just pronounced It's just the sound. That's it. Okay. Now, some speakers, when they do because technically, linguistically, is not a vowel, which I've talked about before. But so it's supposed to be like plus is how you make the vowel. You don't have to do that nonsense. You could just do a straight the same as the consonant, just make it slightly longer and use that to pronounce ER, IR, UR. And you're going to sound perfectly fine, natural, neutral, no problem. Makes your life a lot easier. Now for the OR, this one is actually as far as I can think, as far as I know, it's very, very consistent with only one big exception. So if you see OR in a stressed syllable, it's pronounced O plus If you have the cot merger like I do, makes your life easier. Just learn the cot merger. Otherwise, it's R, which you don't have to do that nonsense. If you like it, go ahead, but there's no reason to. So you say or, okay, if it's in a stressed syllable. If you see OR, again, no silent E or anything after it. Although I don't think the silent E affects the OR pronunciation. Anyway, it doesn't matter. If you see OR, it's not in a stressed syllable, then it's still technically supposed to be pronounced or, but it will almost always reduce to which means ER, IR, UR, and unstressed OR are all pronounced the same. Most of the time. Again, there are exceptions, right? But most of the time you see those, it's just going to be the same thing. So that makes it relatively easy because the answer for, say, 70% of cases is just and that's nice. Now, the one big exception to the OR is if it's WOR, like word, work, world. It's spelled OR and it's stressed, but it's just pronounced which again is good news for you because it's just again. But that breaks the OR in a stressed syllable rule, so you have to be aware of that. Don't say ward or warm, world or something like that. In fact, ward is WARD. The AR spelling is just chaotic. Okay, it could be R, it could be or, it could be like the other ones. It could be air. Okay, especially if there's a silent E at the end. So that one you kind of just have to like learn the pronunciation for each word. So good news is that many cases are just but with the AR, it's completely unpredictable and a big mess. So good news and bad news. But go watch that lesson. Timberland, if we ignore partial world, if we ignore partial world, I can't speak. Partial word devoicing. Good job, me. Okay. I can speak English, I swear. Does that mean we don't sound like a native? As I just use it right there on the word native. So this, I mean, I've commented on this before. My opinion is that you don't have to do the partial world. I can't say that. Partial. Oh, it's because I usually say partial end of word. It's not, you're not partially devoicing the word, you're devoicing the end of word. Anyway, I don't think it's necessarily required, but because it's so common, if you never do it, it probably or it might stand out. It could just maybe make you sound a little clearer and you'll still sound native like. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think it's required. I haven't actually tested that. Like I'd have to, if I took, I guess I could play with it myself, but I'd have to, it's something that's really hard to test when I'm like, if I'm trying to do it and I'm paying attention to it, it's very easy to like mess things up from what would be natural. And so it's kind of hard to test on myself. So I don't know. I would recommend that you try to do it. At least maybe with some sounds. So like say the V, right? If it's a relatively easy one for you to like start in the V and then just drop to the F at the very, very end, include that one. Like just get used to that one. Or you could just do like one sound at a time. You don't have to like try to do all of them at once. You know, that's kind of a lot to handle. So yeah. Deno. See, because of English spelling, I have no idea how to pronounce this. So however it's pronounced, I apologize. But we have a question here about the I as in bit sound. Thank you for the question, by the way. Do you have any do you have any lessons? I'm done. I'm done, guys. Do you have any lessons on differentiating the E as in the diphthong A and the I sound? They sound so similar to me, it's super hard to differentiate. I actually think I do. There's a lot of noise outside for some reason. Yes, I do. But it also includes the vowel. Let's see. Do I have? Yeah, it's the only one I have. So I can send you this link here. It's a minimal pair lesson. So it's actually a minimal triplet lesson. So there's the start of a, and the because they're all kind of very similar, or they can seem similar. So hopefully that helps. Otherwise, that's all I got right now. I might make more content for this problem later, but that's what I got. If we ignore partial end word devoicing, does that mean we don't sound like an I already did that one. Timberland. Don't repost the same question, man. Oh, I see, because you added end of word. Maybe that was a correction. That's okay. Moving on. Miguel. Bienvenidos. I heard sometimes that some people say that's cool without the T. Could you explain that to us? Well, technically speaking, all natives all the time say it without the T because of the TS illusion. But I know what you're asking. So let's get a full picture here. Number one, if you haven't seen the TS illusion, I'm pretty sure I'm the only teacher who talks about that. You type in TS illusion, maybe add English X to it, it'll probably pop up. But when you have a T and an S, okay, so I want to get this down first so this is clear, and then I'm going to actually get to what you're asking here. When we say that's, there's no T there. Okay, anytime you have a TS, like there's no, in the English language, at least in American English, but I'm pretty sure in other dialects as well. In the English language, there is in the pronunciation, the spelling, obviously we see a T, we see an S, but in the pronunciation, there is no word or combination of words where you will pronounce a T and an S, unless maybe you're like super clearly enunciating. If I say like it sucks, then okay, yeah, you have a T and an S. But if they're together, it sucks. That's cool. There's no T there. We start in the T position, but we actually push the S out from there. There's no T released. So yes, I do speak Spanish. Claro. Although I'm working on my posture. It's the posture is off, so I don't quite sound like a native. But anyway, so that's that, right? There's technically never a T there because of the TS illusion. It's a special S. That being said, let's actually get to the question itself. Can we just completely ignore this position and just like do a regular S, basically, right? Say like, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. It's a little lazier. It maybe sounds a little bit more informal. T likes to disappear. T likes to do lots of crazy things. More often than not, it's not an actual T. The only time it's really usually a T in most cases is if it's at the start of a stressed syllable. Otherwise, it's probably going to disappear. It's going to turn into a flap D. All kinds of little weird things that can happen. But it likes to disappear, especially if it's at the end of a word. So yeah, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. No problem with that. No problem with that. As I said, it does sound maybe a little bit more informal, but otherwise it's perfectly normal. So do you speak Spanish? Yes, I do. Sí, hablo español. Y estoy muy fuera de práctica. Y como dije, estoy tratando de mejorar la postura. Y por eso quizás suena, no sé, creo que suena mejor que antes. Pero no, So I clearly still have that like Central American, not Central American, but the American posture in the middle. Si estoy tratando de, it's so hard to do that. It's getting easier to hold the jaw in place, to get this in place, but it's really hard to like get everything because I feel like I have so little space back here. It's just hard to talk. But anyway, yeah, I speak Spanish. I'm rusty, so, but I can understand most of what I hear. Su español es muy bueno, profe. Se le escucha muy claro. Pues gracias. How do you link auxiliaries? Yeah, how do we auxiliaries? Yeah, so there I think there should be an I before the E there. Auxiliaries. Su español es demasiado bueno. Pues gracias. Muy gracias. Muy gracias. No, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. I can't speak Spanish either. I don't speak English or Spanish. I'm incompetent. We'll just say that. My brain isn't working for the language today. So, yeah, back to the question here. How to link auxiliaries and verbs in negative ways like weren't you and aren't you. So linking, so you're talking about like the pronunciation of it, or are you talking about the formation? I guess it would have to be the pronunciation because clearly you know how to form it. I actually have contractions. Share the link. So I have this lesson. This is present tense contractions. It talks about pretty much every detail that you need to know, including the pronunciation of the contractions, positive and negative. After that, on the end screen, or you could just go to the playlist. But on the end screen, there's past tense, which also contracts in the negative. I talk about the pronunciation for that as well. After that is the future tense. I'm making a whole little mini series for that. So I will briefly answer this question here, but you can learn more by watching those lessons. When we say weren't you, there's actually several things that can happen. And I didn't necessarily, I didn't go over every possible pronunciation in those lessons. I tried to include some variation, but I'm probably going to make like a special lesson towards the end of that series, talking about like various special things that we can do that are maybe a little more advanced. But with weren't, okay, so we tend to stop a T at the end. You can push it out, it's possible, right? There's a T there, but we tend to stop it. So you could say weren't you, you might hear that. Aren't you, probably not. It's much less common, but it can happen, especially if you're enunciating. So it's like, aren't you? It's a little more likely to hear that T. Still not required, but it's more likely because I'm maybe saying it more clearly. It's a dynamic range. That's what you guys have to understand. It's a dynamic range. It's not, this is the answer. It's, this is most likely the answer most of the time, unless this. And I know it makes it more complicated, but that's real speech, unfortunately. And we say, weren't you? Okay, so you can stop the T. Weren't you? Okay. Or aren't you? It's probably the most common thing to do. There's another special thing that we could do. It's a little more advanced. I've talked about this before, not for this specific combination like in weren't or aren't, but I talked about it before when talking about partial nasalization of N. I actually have a lesson about that as well. Just type in like partial nasalization of vowels English hacks and you'll find it. I don't want to keep like going and like linking every single thing because I'm probably gonna have to do that a lot. But any vowel before N, M, and ng, especially N and M, we tend to, not required, but we tend to very commonly use partial nasalization, and partial is very important there. You don't want to overdo it. And that will, in addition, allow us to drop certain things. So when I say weren't you, I'm already partially nasalizing the I'm not saying like earn. I'm not saying weren't. I'm saying instead of so I'm letting a little bit go through the nose because I know there's an N after it. Weren't. Okay. So that our is already partially nasalized because of the presence of the N. Again, it doesn't have to be, but it's a very common thing that happens. And sometimes if you don't do it, it might actually stand out and be a little weird. So I recommend that you try to do that. But because of that partial nasalization, it's as if the N is present in the vowel. And so you can actually not close into the N. You don't have to actually pronounce the N sound or form the N sound. So if I say were, okay, then that T, because if I say were you, were, or it's not nasal. Okay. So that would be positive. Now, what happens if I say weren't you? I partially nasalize the I don't pronounce the N, and I don't pronounce the T at all. I don't even stop the T. Well, because of that partial nasalization, we know it has to be negative. And so I can actually just say it exactly like this. So if it were positive, were you? If it's negative, were you, but with partial nasalization on the were you, weren't you, weren't you, weren't you, weren't you, weren't you. Okay. Now we'll probably still want to get a little bit of motion here to just make it a little clearer. Or if I say like, aren't you, aren't you, aren't you going, aren't you, especially in faster speed speech. Like if you're speaking more slowly, more clearly, like I'm trying to do, it's a little awkward and it's not going to work. But if you're speaking fast enough, it doesn't have to be super, super fast, but if you're speaking fast enough, welcome King Lion, welcome Kairos. I see you all there. Welcome Abdullah. Then it works just fine. So if I say, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" Or "Are you going to the party? Are you? Are you? Are you?" I'm just going straight from into y, but I'm partially nasalizing the no n, no t, no stop, no anything. Okay, that's a little more advanced. Okay, but it's very common. It's very, very common. And it's also part of the reason why you guys have listening problems when you listen to real speech, because you don't know about these things, and teachers don't teach you these things, which bugs me a lot because it's kind of important. Most teachers are much more preoccupied. There's good teachers out there. I don't want to try to tear anybody down or anything. But most teachers seem to be preoccupied with you speaking clearly instead of naturally. That seems to be like the primary objective. And I'm trying to teach you, I'm not trying to teach you how to speak unclearly, but I'm trying to teach you how to speak naturally so that you can actually sound as close to a native as possible, if that's your goal. So anyway, ¿cuánto cobra por dar clases en vivo a mis 4 hijas? So, well, if they're children, I don't work with children, like period, like not at all. I never work with children. In fact, I have a strict policy. I don't work with anybody under the age of 18. So even if they're teenagers, I don't work with them. So yeah, if they're over the age of 18, then you can find more information on italki. There should be a link in the description to my teacher profile. But yeah. Hi, Josh. Question: do you think there is a difference between the E sound, as in the word eat, and the Spanish E? Let's say the word isla. Yeah, there is a difference. And this is where the mouth posture comes in. Number one, the Spanish tongue is, number one, the jaw generally tends to be held a little bit more closed in Spanish compared to American English. Number two, the tongue tends to be pushed more close. So number one, we already have less space. And then because the tongue is pushed forward, you can actually see this on the vowel chart. The E, although it's still around this position, like there's the teeth right here, top of the mouth, it's still around this position, uses the same part of the tongue. It's actually farther forward compared to American English. So when we don't push the tongue forward, it naturally gets us into that slightly pulled back position. Here, you're not trying to pull it back to like manipulate the E. It's just if you don't push your tongue forward, you're going to be in the right spot. The jaw is going to be held a little bit more open. Even though it's an E sound, we still need that space. Okay. It can close a little bit from what I talk about as the general height for the posture, but it's not going to close up a lot like some teachers might make you believe. Most importantly, we have this back area here, which will affect the sound. But even if this is out of place in the Spanish mouth, because the jaw tends to be more closed, the tongue is pushed forward, it's kind of flatter here maybe, you have less space throughout here. But because the mouth posture in American English, the center of gravity is in the middle, there's always going to be some little pressure here from that center of gravity. And so it actually doesn't matter if the back of the tongue is up or down, as long as you have some little extra space here in the middle. So it's actually, even though the E is here, the there's going to be sort of like this little shape in the middle, not super deep. We're going to talk about that in the phase 2 lesson, but there's going to be more space here. Okay, the easy thing to do is not to raise the back of the tongue also. That can also help you maybe keep this in place. So it actually kind of be more like this instead of like this in Spanish. And then the jaw, of course, is a little bit more open, and so that gives us a little bit more space to work with too. So because we have a little extra space here and we're not pushed forward, the Spanish E tends to sound a little bit more like E, 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 which I still have a bit of that English posture. Eh, 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 E, 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 E. So it's very, very similar. Very, very similar. The E's across languages are like super similar. They're easily identifiable as like the same sound, right? But there's a little bit of quality difference. In Spanish and Russian, those are the two big ones, people that I'm working with. But Spanish and Russian, for sure, the E sound seems to be a little bit higher, a little bit thinner sounding. Where in American English, I've had several students describe it as sort of like almost like 3D, E, 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 instead of like E, 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 E. And I'm trying to do it in like a perfect, clearly enunciated way. It's not always going to come out that way, but um, yeah. So maybe it just sounds a little fuller, a little bit deeper, especially when we get this in place. If you don't have this in place, you're probably not going to get the full sound, but this again is the key, and then this should always be in place for everything. But small difference. And I'm working with Kairos in some lessons, so we're almost there. Don't get too far ahead of yourself. You got to pass the Schwa test first, center of gravity test. King Leon, welcome. I want to say Leon instead of Lion. King Leon. Abdullah, welcome. Timmerland, another question. Can you please explain to us how to use the past perfect continues? So continuous or continuous. So you spelled continues, right? E is silent. It's just silent at the end of continue. You would have to spell it this way. Continuous. Yeah, I'm gonna come back to that in a second. Joe has a thing here. Mis hijas tienen 18, 19, 20, 22 años. Ya son grandes, pero cero inglés. Okay, I could work with them. That's 4 new students at once, which is kind of a lot. Now I don't do group classes, so I want to clarify that. Like, it would be one-on-one, especially for the work I do. And I also have to clarify, because I don't know what you're looking for. I no longer teach general English. I don't teach business English. I don't teach test prep. I don't teach most things. All I'm doing, the only offerings I have right now, technically I have a logical prepositions offering, which nobody's taking, so whatever. I have a language mentoring offering, which could just be a single consultation class, or it could be sort of an ongoing thing where I help the student. Hello, Finn. I help the student figure out their weaknesses, figure out a plan, but I'm not actually teaching English. Like, I'll give some feedback, but it's more like guiding them in their own study. They might have another teacher, or they might be completely self-studying. So it's not me teaching English, it's me guiding how to learn better. And the main thing that I offer, that I teach, is mouth posture. So it's pronunciation, only pronunciation, and it's only through mouth posture. Okay, it's a very specific course. And technically the course is still being built. So there's that as well. So if your daughters are not looking for that specifically, then unfortunately I don't have anything to offer. So just so that's clear. But anyway, so back to Timberland. Can you please explain how to use the past perfect continuous? This is a bit of a complicated topic. I'm going to have a lesson about this at some point when I start talking more and more about grammar. It's probably by the time I finish the mouth posture course, I'm probably going to be talking a lot more about grammar. But it's a little complicated. But there's good news and Well, let's just say there's good news. It's not as complicated as a grammar book or many teachers might make you think, because of the way that Americans actually speak. There's the grammar, and then there's the way we actually speak. So this also affects the present perfect continuous, although it's a little more complicated in the present perfect. And I'm going to have a lesson about that as well later. So the past perfect is actually easier. Um, I would probably say in 95% of cases, so almost all the time, we only use the past perfect, not if it's grammatically supposed to be used, but we only tend to use the present or the past perfect if it's not clear that something happened before something else based on the context. Okay, because that's the purpose of the past perfect, right? It's okay. So we have right the present perfect says there's now and there's some action in the past and they're linked together. Maybe it's like still happening or I still have the experience, right? When we do the past perfect, we take those two events and we put them both in the past. So now, grammatically, in order to know, well, this event happened first, we say, I had seen the movie before you showed it to me. Okay. So I saw it at some point in the past and then you showed it to me, but both actions are in the past. Okay. That's the basic grammar. Um, in real life, we're much more likely to say this: I saw the movie before you showed it to me. Just use simple past, simple past. Why? Because it's very, very clear in this context which action came first. Usually it's clear. Okay. Now I'm horrible thinking of examples off the top of my head. What natives will do, and I've experienced this myself, but I can't remember the examples. I've experienced it a couple times since I'm a teacher and I try to pay attention to these things. Where what a native will do is, as we're in the flow of speaking and we're about to get to this part, like I saw the movie before you showed it to me. Um, we will naturally, like, we'll instinctively sort of feel, oh, this might not be clear if I don't use the past perfect. And we don't think of it that way. Like we don't have language past perfect. We just speak, right? But we feel, oh, if I don't say I had done, it might not be clear and I want it to be clear. Or we might just do it to make it very, very, very clear if we choose to. But usually it's like it wouldn't be clear based on the context. And so as we're in the flow of speaking, we'll feel, oh, okay, I need to switch to the past perfect here, do that and just like keep going. Like it's sort of an instinctual thing that we'll tend to do. Sometimes we might not notice because the way we're thinking of it is like we think it's clear, but then it's actually not as clear to the person. And we have to, it might cause a little confusion. But that doesn't happen very often. So the good news here is that 95% of the time, you do not have to ever use the past perfect. Okay. You can generally ignore the past perfect. It's almost a useless grammar point. Almost. Not completely. Almost. Um, so the answer to your question is don't use it. That's how you use it. You don't. Um, Now, that's not very useful for knowing the cases when you should. And again, it's sort of an in context thing. So when I make the lesson for that, I'm actually going to try to think of or identify examples where it wouldn't be clear based on the context. Off the top of my head, I'm horrible with that. So where I'm not going to go into that. But in that lesson, it should become a little clearer of like, oh, okay, I see how maybe it's not clear in this case. And I would use the past perfect. But just generally, you don't have to worry about it. So there you go, problem solved. Finn has all the questions today. Can N come out kind of warped, palatalized? Ugh, terminology. I hate technical terminology. Can N come out kind of warped before a Y sound? So I see why you put palatalized, because you're trying to just like warped in what way? Because I would ask that. Like, what do you mean warped? um, so that by itself doesn't make much sense. Let me continue. As in the word pair in you, or continue, or do N's before Y sounds always sound exactly the same as the N in say no? Okay. So basically does the N, when we have an N and a Y combination, can that affect the exact way that the N is produced or comes out? Um, in you, no, not in you, in. The answer is yes and no. And what I mean by that is, think of the Z sound, for example. Z. Okay. If I say, he is young, is z, 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 z. The start of the Z is z, but as I flow into the Y, you're actually going to hear the Z take on a little bit of a different shape. Z. It's the same with the N. This is a normal N. I'm not doing anything special. In, ni. So it's not that the N is coming out weird. It's that if you're flowing properly from the N into the Y, the releasing of that sound before the Y is going to be a little bit shaped by that Y sound if it's close to the Y. So if you do like an ah, it's not going to warp the ah or anything because ah is way back here. Or the g goes back here. G, 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 g. See, with that one, the g itself is the same, but I'm already like up here. I'm starting to go into the Y. And so overall in combination, you can kind of say like there's a transition there, but the g is not like, it's not like g. I can't even do that. Gia, or something like the g itself is just being released normally. Because it's two different parts of the tongue. So it's just N to Y linking. That's all it is. The only way that it wouldn't come out that way, as far as I can think, would be if maybe you actually separate them. You're speaking really clearly. So if I say like no, in your case, see, and I didn't say in your, I said in your. So I actually released the N and then did the Y. So it depends on how you're speaking. Edo is also here. I see. Riddick is here. Got lots of questions flowing. I like it. Okay, remember, guys, I go in order. If you give me a super chat, I will have to answer that. Super chats are not required, but that's how you get your things answered more quickly. Otherwise, I go in order. And hopefully I see the super chat because I am on StreamYard. It should pop up, but I've never had one since I've done StreamYard, so I can't verify that myself. Anyway, Finn, does 70 sound like 70? Well, I just said it that way, so yes. And does carpenter sound like carpenter? Yes, it does. It can. Both of these can. There's actually multiple pronunciations. I've heard that's how people say it despite it breaking the pattern for the NT pronunciation. Actually, so can we say 70? 70, 70. So use the, well, see, yeah, so the Y, it's actually an E sound, right? So we have NT plus vowel. Now the NT plus vowel rule, again, it's dynamic. It doesn't have to apply, but it more often than not does. In terms of like, can it not apply in this case? I don't think there are any exceptions if it's between words. Like you can always drop the T if it's linking to a vowel at the start of the next word. When within a word, it doesn't always work, but it does still commonly work. Can we say 70? Yeah, you can. Can we say carpenter? Yeah, you can. It's possible. For whatever reason, in this particular case with these particular words, we tend to do it as a D instead of dropping the T. It's English. Sorry. Maybe it just makes it a little clearer. But yeah, the least common thing to do would be actually produce it as a T. If you're enunciating, you can do a 7T, carpenter, it's fine. But that's the least likely option. So yeah, that the D here would be the most common one. Any tricks on how to create more space in the mouth row area and add more breath? Yeah, watch the mouth posture lessons. It's literally a step-by-step guide to do that. So more space in the mouth, you got to open your jaw more, right? Like that's that's the number one thing. Like you can sort of lower the tongue within your mouth, but if your jaw isn't open enough, that's obviously the biggest thing that you can affect. Now you don't want to open your jaw too much. It doesn't work. But all right, if my jaw is too closed and I try to say it just doesn't come out right. Okay, that can maybe sound good for maybe like sort of like a true schwa sound, but for that center of gravity, that full sound, it's physically impossible for it to sound right because my jaw isn't open enough. Okay, so opening the jaw more. In addition to that, when the jaw opens and when you set this back area, it's going to give more space for the tongue. The tongue is going to sort of settle down a bit. You don't have to push it down. Now, for the center of gravity, right, to get that sound, you do have to push down in the middle and back a little bit. So there is some engagement there. But the tongue itself, overall, even if you don't do anything special, just opening the jaw and lowering this is going to give you more space for the tongue. It's going to settle down and back. Cairo's actually just recently realized that for himself, where because he's a Spanish speaker and Spanish has a tongue push forward. And he realized when he starts to shift this, because I told him, don't try to push the tongue back, don't try to push the tongue down. Let it settle down and back when you open this. And that's exactly what happened. So it's all connected, but open the jaw. Okay. Open this back here. Now, how do we open the throat area? Remember, you're not trying to open the whole throat. It's the top of the throat. Okay. Don't try to do this and open the whole throat. Definitely don't try to speak from the chest. Okay. You want to actually control this. Okay. Speaking from the chest can accidentally give you the right result, but it also doesn't work for everybody because it's accidental. You want to actually figure out what is actually causing the proper sound, what is actually causing the proper space, and get it intentionally instead of accidentally. So it's this top of throat area here. Okay. Now it depends on your native language. If I remember right, Edo, I think you are a Spanish speaker. I'm not sure, but in my experience, most languages tend to hold this a little bit higher. They tend to hold it a little bit tighter, pulling in this way. Okay. And I still haven't been able to figure out the exact way that you guys do that. It might be a little different from language to language, but trying to adjust into the Spanish posture, I'm having difficulty figuring out how to make that work in the best way. Part of it is just kind of building up some of the muscle and getting familiar with it, but there seems to be a special way that you guys do that. Anyway, point is that you need to lower it. Now, part of that means relaxing some things, okay, just like other teachers tell you, but it's not completely relaxed because when you hold this up here and you hold it tighter, to you, that feels relaxed. And for you, it is relaxed. Okay. Me holding this lower and a little more open to me feels relaxed, but obviously I'm holding it in a particular place. So there is some tension there. Okay. So you have to relax some things that are maybe holding it higher, let it settle down and hold it in place there, not too far down because then you're going to sound too deep. Okay. But just the top of the throat again, let it settle down. That's immediately going to start giving you a lot more space. But then to really get the full amount of space, you have to push out here. Okay. And you have to hold that open a little bit. Now, I'm going to mention this in the phaser ear training lesson, and I'm glad that Abdullah is here. I hope Abdullah is still here. Because last time, I think it was last time, Abdullah was asking me about how to make that schwa sound. And over the last couple weeks, I've actually realized there are two little tiny hints or images that are helping a lot of people find this sort of true schwa open space, what to do with the tongue perfectly. Okay, not the center of gravity. The center of gravity is built on it. You're just going to further it down. But if we're just trying to get a nice good where this is open, okay, the sound is still in the center of the tongue, but it's not it's just and what that is, imagine if you have a finger. See, you can do that. Imagine if you have a finger and you take that finger, you put it straight through your head, straight through your skull, okay, all the way onto the middle of your tongue, okay? And you want to be a little off center, maybe just slightly back. So it's not middle of the middle, but it's still going to be around the middle of the middle, just a little bit back, not back here, a little bit. And you want to imagine that that finger is just gently touching, not pushing down, just very lightly setting there. Okay, like you can feel this little tiny pressure right there. That's point one. Okay, that's all you should feel on your tongue. Make sure it's not pushed forward. Okay, and getting this open will help it not be pushed forward. That's important too, because if it's pushed forward, which they're two different things. You can still have this open and still be pushed forward. So just because you fix this doesn't mean this is going to fix. You got to keep both of them in mind, but ultimately they're connected. So as long as your tongue isn't pushed forward and you have this little pressure here, your tongue is good. Then when you lower this, the way that you get it open, okay, so number one, the way most languages seem to work is there's a little bit of inward tension to help hold it up and a little tighter, right? What you want to do is you want to release that inward tension and take again, like a finger, as if somebody's going straight through the back of your neck to right here. And I have beard and stuff. It's hard to see. Here's my Adam's apple. This is the top of my Adam's apple. You want to go right above that, not the top of the Adam's apple, right above the Adam's apple, that point right there. Imagine that there's a little finger from the inside of your throat, just gently pushing, not trying to push like this, okay? Just a little pressure that you feel right here from the inside. If you have this finger pressure and your tongue isn't pushed forward, you pull this down and you have a finger pressure right here going outward. That doesn't always work, but a lot of the people I'm working with, when I explain those 2 points to them, they immediately, even if it's not perfect, they immediately start sounding better. Okay. So that's that. Okay. You have to open the jaw, lower this, hold it just slightly open, remove whatever tension you had to sort of hold it up and tighter. And then the breath control is its own little topic. I've noticed that some people, even after they fix this, they might be holding this a little tight, and that can affect the breath. As I talked about in, I think the phase 0 lesson, it was phase 0, phase 1. There's breath control and there's breath flow. So there's like how much you're pushing out and then how much you're sort of like tightening or relaxing. And you just have to find the perfect balance for that. So you got to play with it, like like you have to explore it, like, make it more open, let more come out, restrict it, let more come out, restrict it. Okay. I don't have much specific advice on how to open that more. It's just you figure out how to make your throat more open. It's not necessarily trying to like open your throat, but there's little muscles that can control that, and you have to kind of become aware of some of those muscles. And you could relatively easily do that just by playing with trying to control the breath in different ways. So okay, that's that. Can totally come out as totally. Yeah, totally. Yes, it can. That's going to be on the faster end. Okay, doesn't have to be super fast, but it's going to be on the faster end. If you're speaking too slowly, it doesn't work. Yeah, totally. That's totally doable. A little bit weird. Can I'm not come out as I'm not? If so, how fast do you need to be speaking to display normal speech? I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. It's quite lazy. You do have to be speaking pretty quickly. I would probably put this into fast speech, like not even on the higher end of normal, like the faster end of normal, like actual fast speech. Like, I'm not doing that. In fact, you can even kind of drop the M, just do like a really weak, lazy M that's not fully closed. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Possible. If you're speaking normal speed, I'd recommend not doing that. For about, ignore that about can be reduced to about. For about an hour. For about. Yeah, actually, interesting. I never noticed that. That's possible. That's probably just sort of a lazy, because instead of going like r to even though it's like right there for a, which is also very common for about, you can do that too. We don't even have to like leave the R. You just sort of like re-push it out really quick for. So then that would just be, it's not just one it's not for about, that doesn't work. So it's like when we say like there are contracted in speech, which we don't write, but we say it in speech, there, or where are, where, it'd be exactly the same for about. So as long as you're not like holding it as one solid piece, that does exist. Yeah, it's perfectly fine. Again, if you're enunciating more, Probably not, but even in the flow of normal speech, that should be okay. Could you tell me about sentence stress? So yes, welcome Riddick. Thank you for being patient here. Trying to get to everybody in order. Could you tell me about sentence stress? I am mixing up because wait, by baby what? Okay. I think we mixed up the way to. So you just write BC for because. That's what we usually do for shorthand. BC. I don't know where the W is coming from, but because some coaches, COA. This is couches. It's a different word. Some coaches tell stress content words. Others tell different. Like there is no particular rule for it. Different people have different ways of teaching. That's part of why I'm here, because I disagree with some ways that things are taught, like vowel length. But I have a few lessons on sentence stress. It's kind of a big topic, but the single most important core thing, and this is what defines the rhythm of the language, because the rhythm is ultimately based on the stress. There's a little bit more to it than that, but it's basically how the stress works. That's the core component. So we know that English is a stress timed language. Stress timed. What does that mean? It means that the timing of the language, the rhythm, is based on the stress. Okay, so there are stress syllables and there are unstressed syllables. And they're right content words and function words. I've talked about before. All of that information. You can look up my lessons on stress. But the big general thing is if it's a content word, which is a noun, verb, adverb, adjective, negative, like not, the WH question words when they're used as questions, who, what, where, when, why, how, those are content, right? Because they give us content, right? It's the stuff, the actions, the nouns, the things, the descriptions. Okay. If you have other words like prepositions, articles, so like on, about, the, well, about is 2-syllable, but on, in, the, if it's 1-syllable content word, it's always stressed, guaranteed. It's a 100% rule. It's one of the rare 100% rules. If it's 1-syllable function word or grammar word, like a preposition or an article, then it's by default not stressed. It will usually not be stressed. But if you have a special reason to stress it, like if I say I'm the best, I'm choosing to stress it to emphasize the fact that like I'm the number one, like I'm the only one. And it's dynamic, but usually it's not going to be stressed for function words. This is a general overview. If it's more than 1 syllable, the content versus function goes out the window, and because any word that is more than 1 syllable will have at least 1 syllable stress guaranteed. Okay, it doesn't matter what kind of word it is. So we say about, that's a preposition. First syllable is unstressed, second syllable is stressed. If we say tomorrow, okay, tomorrow. So 3 syllables, in this case, the middle one is stressed. Sometimes there's secondary stress. If we say understand, stand is the primary stress, and is also stress, but it's not as much. Understand. Many teachers ignore secondary stress because they don't think it's very important. This, that, whatever. It's not as important as the primary stress. You have to get the primary stress, but the secondary stress is also, I think, important and useful. It can really help you get the right rhythm. Okay, all that aside, I don't want to get caught in the details here. The single most important thing that you want to focus on, okay, regardless of what kind of word it is, whatever, you want to make sure that if it's a stressed syllable, and we're talking about sentence stress, right? I had to talk about word stress first. So here are your question about sentence stress. If it's a stressed syllable, you need to make the stressed syllable louder and longer, and usually higher in pitch. And most English learners tend to do that fine because many languages use stress in some way, even if it's a different timing, like syllable timing. Like Spanish has stressed syllables, but the timing is different. So that's usually not too big of a problem. They might not change the length so much, but they will make it louder. And so that at least helps. The big thing that many students don't do, and that I don't hear a lot of teachers talking about, or hear a lot of see a lot of researchers talking about, is that you can't leave the unstressed syllables neutral. Okay, so you can't say like about, about. You have to say about, about. Okay. Now, if you're speaking more clearly and I say what about, then it might come out a little bit more clearly, but it's still relatively to each other, the stress versus unstressed syllable, whether it's in a word, between words. Okay. Um, that unstressed syllable needs to be really short and quiet. And that's the big mistake that a lot of people, English learners, make, is they don't make that unstressed syllable really short and quiet. And that doesn't matter if there's a reduction to it or not. Sometimes there's reductions, sometimes there's not. Part of the reason why reductions exist, maybe the reason why reductions exist, is because of this making it super short and quiet. So that's that. Now, when we go to the full sentence, I have a little mini course on intonation, which talks a bit about this. I think the way most people talk about this, they say like sentence level stress. There's going to be like the most important word in the sentence, which by default would be like the last content word, and that's true. But I have a very, very, very big disagreement with how I see this being taught. It seems that when teachers are talking about sentence stress, they completely ignore word stress. So if I say like, I want to go to the beach. So beach is the last content word there. If I don't have a special context to move the focus word, it's going to be on beach. Okay. So that is, so want is stressed, go is stressed, beach is stressed. And beach is going to be just a little bit more, a little bit louder, a little bit longer than the other stressed words, because that's the focus of the sentence. Okay. And most teachers teach that very well, as far as I've seen. But then they stop there. They don't say, oh, remember, by the way, want and go are also still stressed, and you still have to make them stressed. They just say beach is the word that you really want to stand out. And that's, at best, that's just incomplete. At worst, it's very misleading and confusing for you. And it causes questions like this. So when I say I want to go to the beach, okay, I is unstressed. Usually be reduced, maybe even all the way to a schwa. But I, I, I. Okay, want, 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 want. I want. Oh, not I want. I want. I want. Okay, want to. We'll probably say wanna. Now that to is unstressed, so we're gonna go wanna, not wanna, wanna. I wanna. So there's still clearly a stress happening here. If I try to just put the stress on beach, and which this is actually gonna be really hard for me to do. If I say like, I want to go to the beach. I want to go to the beach. That's not English. Okay. So you'll say here, I want to go to the beach. Dun 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 dun. So whatever the focus word is going to be a bigger dun. Okay. If I shift that focus word to go, because maybe I'm talking on the phone and you think I want to leave the beach, but I'm not at the beach yet. So I have to clarify. I say, no, I don't want to leave the beach. I want to go to the beach. I want to go to the beach. I want to go to the beach. Okay. Now go is going to stand out more than want and beach because I'm shifting the focus word to clarify based on the context. Okay. So that's what I call attentional intonation, which again, the intonation mini course, just type in English Hacks intonation playlist or something, you'll find it. It talks about the 3 types of intonation. There's structural intonation, attentional intonation, which involves the focus word, and then there's emotional intonation. So hopefully that helps and points you in the right direction. If you have any other questions to follow up on that, let me know if something was like unclear with that, but hopefully that makes some sense. And you can definitely go check out those those lessons I mentioned, some of my lessons on stress, some of my lessons on intonation, and things should start becoming clearer, I hope. It sounds like I'm at. It sounds nothing like I'm at. Those are 2 completely different vowels. If you try to use a in the negative word not, whether it's contracted or we have some sort of reduction like this or whatever, no native speaker would ever understand that you're saying not. That would be nat or I'm at. Okay. So that, not at all, not even close. How would you correct the forward tongue position in Spanish? Well, it doesn't matter if you're a Spanish speaker or not. So, as I said, getting this open, that's going to help give you more space, but that's not necessarily going to fix the tongue push forward because it's all one big problem, but they can be controlled independently. If you don't get this first, it is possible to just not push it forward, even if this is still here. But number one, it's going to be a little harder to do. And number two, the reason my theory of why the tongue gets pushed forward when this is held higher is because if it's not pushed forward, you have no space here. And let's see, you end up talking like this. It's just there's so little space that there's just lots of like, and your voice probably wouldn't sound exactly like that. I'm just trying to kind of tighten it up or whatever, but you get the point. There's just so little space here that it's hard to speak, and so the tongue has to actually get out of the way by being pushed forward. Um, so if you just remove that and don't fix this, it's probably just going to be hard to speak. So I do recommend that you get this open first, okay, and then once that's open, you have to do this. Now, you pushing the tongue forward, it's a very small thing. It's not like your tongue is like this. It's not like you're trying to push. No, it's just a little bit there. It's going to feel like a lot when you figure out how to do it, but objectively, it's just a little tweak, um, a little change. Now, to you, it being pushed forward feels relaxed. So then, how do you undo it? How do you right? This is why teachers saying like, "Oh, you have to relax." It's not wrong, but it's also not very useful, and it's also not 100% accurate. Um, so that's the other reason why I say getting this in place helps because not only do you now have more space here, but that will allow the tongue because you're not trying to push the tongue back, right? The fix for pushing it forward is not to push it back. You also don't want to push it down. Okay. You need to get the jaw open, you need to get the space open, and then let the tongue settle down and back. Okay. That's a little tricky because, as I said, you could still be pushing the tongue forward. But once you get this open, you might notice that your tongue actually kind of starts to settle down and back and you lose that forward position. It works that way for some people. Other people, they end up holding it forward. And then you just have to kind of play with it, right? Like it push it farther forward, pull it back, right? Move it around so that you can kind of feel that muscle there. And then using the audio reference for the true schwa, which I added to the Google Drive folder in phase 0, you can compare how you sound. So if you sound like uh, instead of uh, 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 okay, you know that you're pushed forward. You cannot do a perfect American English true schwa sound if your tongue is pushed forward. It's not possible. So if you don't hear, and obviously there's the ear training problem, but if you don't hear, you hear anything else than that, maybe, I mean, it could be something else that's going wrong, obviously, but if everything else is in place, then you know that your tongue is probably pushed forward, or it's just not on the right position. So, unfortunately, it's one of those like all of this. This goes back to another thing I was telling Abdullah before is um, like I can guide you, I can give you the tips, I can give you the information, I can tell you sort of like what to do and how to do it. But at the end of the day, you have to experience it. It's a skill. Right? Like if you want to learn how to play the guitar, I can't just say, "Here's a guitar. Now you know how to play it." Like it doesn't work that way. You have to spend time figuring out how things move around, how things work. So, um, it is what it is. No, that's impossible. It sounds completely different. I don't think you get what I mean. Is there a faster way to say accidentally? Accidentally, accidentally, accidentally did it. Accidentally, 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 accidentally. Yes, I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is. Accidentally broke it. Accidentally broke it. Accidentally broke it. Yeah, so accidentally. Accent. In fact, you can actually partially nasalize the drop the n and the t, and then before that, instead of saying accide, you can say accès. So you go from accent, partial nasalization, ali, accidentally, 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 but you have to say it quickly. And you should probably start the not partially nasalized and then hold it while adding the partial nasalization. Again, it's super fast. So it's like half of a regular half of a partially nasalized and then drop the partial nasalization as you go into the uli. Exhale, exhale. Yeah. That's probably the fastest, laziest way to do it. Because IMOT doesn't exist. IMOT doesn't exist, but yeah, what he was saying is like, is it possible to drop the N, partially nasalize the O, which would tell us that there's an N there? And yes, the answer is yes, you can. So even though I'm ought doesn't exist, the partialization of the O gives the illusion that the N is there. Because we're using that vowel. If you change it to then it's not gonna work. Like that has nothing to do with I'm or the N. It's a completely different vowel. Axinally. That works too. Accidentally. Seems, I don't want to say weird, but accidentally. Yeah, that's fine. Is it even physically possible to pronounce endin with an endin? So basically, where we have like an N and an N with a D in between it, and it might be physically possible. I don't think we would, because that's a little uncomfortable. Like it's hard for me to do. Yes, in Spanish. Okay. Why is everyone speaking Spanish? ¿Por qué no? Vamos a hablar en español. Vamos a aprender cómo hablar español hoy. So we're going to learn how to speak Spanish today. Anyway, no, there's a lot of Spanish speakers here, right? And although I'm not a native, I'm technically one of them because I speak Spanish. Sayod, sorry, because of English spelling, I have no idea how to say your name. But from Tajikistan. Very nice. Always like hearing where people are from. Welcome. You've probably been hanging out for a little minute before I recognized that you were here because I'm going in order. Always going in order. Let me go ahead and skip ahead, say hi to some other people really quick. Mario is here. Okay. Fluent American. 1247. Sorry, man. Completely unacknowledged you because I'm so far behind. If you're still here, if you left, I don't blame you. If you're still here, yes. We got lots of questions today, so I'm trying to keep up. But yes, the beard, I guess, is coming in full force. But anyway, I'll try to keep an eye on the bottom of the chat if you're still here and you say something else. But Dusha is also here. But I gotta keep going in order, guys. Still here. Yay. Cool. I don't know if you want to. Oh yeah, you had a stream yesterday. See, I'm so much in my own little world and like trying to work on my videos and dealing with my own stuff. I completely forget that other teachers exist. And it's like you hear, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I could have gone yesterday and joined your stream, and I didn't do that. But anyway, yeah, I don't know if you want to hop on, you can. No pressure for that. Doesn't have to be like a weekly thing or anything, but if you're just stopping by to say hi, that's perfectly fine. I'm so far behind, it'd probably just be better if I focus on the questions anyway. So keep doing you, yeah. But definitely glad to see you. Glad that you stopped by. I'll try to remember to at least say hi on your stream. It's good for me too, right? Because it's exposure to my channel. So, it's a win-win. About to head out, but soon. Okay. No problem. Well, wherever you're going, have a good time. So, okay, back to where we were. Would you ever go from a schwa to an sound in a word like writer, rather than just going the er sound itself if you're singing and holding out a note. So like saying, I'm a writer, maybe. I guess it could happen, but I don't see why that has any relevance to anything. But yeah, possible, not required. Can we say weren't there without the T and TH? We weren't there. No. Yes and no. Depends on what you define as a TH. You can drop the T. At the bare minimum, you have to modify the N to a dental N. And we can do that because we can replace the TH, the voice TH with a dental D, so there, not a normal D. Okay, that sounds very informal, very uneducated, but a flatter D, preferably on the teeth. That's the easy way to do it. Because of that, when we have an N before it, you can actually just do a dental N. We will hear a difference if you release the N here or you release the N here. Even though the N itself sounds almost the same, the release we'll notice is different. So if you say weren't there, that's all you need to do. Just modify the N and you're perfectly fine. We can also still keep the stop. Weren't there. In that case, we're probably going to actually end up push out the dental D. Weren't there. But yeah, you can just do a dental N. Just a reminder, folks, if you're watching, don't forget to press like. It helps streams a lot. Yes, that is very true. Thanks for the I want to say channel management, but it's not like you're my channel manager. I forget things like that all the time. I also don't like asking for likes and stuff, but yeah, like, subscribe, click the join button, which apparently is no longer blue. So, but yes, thanks for the encouragement for people to like. If you're getting value of it, I don't want you to just push the like button because you don't like it. Like, that would be lame. Just use dental N. See, Abdullah knows what's up. Very good. It is very difficult to understand the difference between can and can't. The T is not heard. Yeah. And there's a reason for that because we don't often pronounce the T. This is a common problem. I've talked about this several times before. There's a couple key things that we tend to do differently. Can positive is more often than not reduced to either kin or kun. So that's one thing, right? So you know that if you hear that it's going to be positive because we don't do that in the negative. As far as I know, maybe we're speaking really quickly, but generally it's for the positive. Now for the negative, we'll also really let that nasality come through because there's going to be partial nasalization of a before N and M. That's one reason why it seems to sound so different. Because even like if I just do ah, right, but I nasalize it, ah, it sounds like a completely different sound, but I'm doing everything the same. I'm just letting it become more nasal. So, and I think a lot of teachers get confused by that. There are other things you can do. Yes, you can do the which I don't recommend. It does exist, but that's not the thing to do, as I've talked about before in the truth about adverse or ab before N and M lesson. Anyway, in the negative, we'll really tend to let that partial nasalization come through, maybe even give it a little extra nasalization. And then we will probably stop the T. So can, instead of like can, we'll say can, really strong on the nasal. Can't. Okay. So that extra nasalization plus stopping the T will let a native speaker know that, which remember to stop the T, you just have to close the glottis. That lets a native speaker know that's negative. Now, this is also between can and can't. This is occasionally a problem, even for natives. So you're not alone. Probably like at least 90% of the time, it's not a problem for us. But even for us, it can sometimes be unclear and we'll have to ask for clarification. So we're lazy, right? American English is lazy. Happy Sunday. It is still Sunday here. Yes. It's 1:00. Remember, I'm in the past. Oh, you're talking about to King Leon, yeah. Okay, so you're talking to other people. Good, 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 good. Anyway, moving on. I have to catch up. I've seen a video where in the subtitles we can watch see, right? So you watch the video, but you see the subtitles. I know watch, look, see. It's a big problem. I'm gonna make a lesson about that eventually too. There's a secret to that. Let me know if you want to know the secret, and I can tell you. We can see what we were, but the person says it so quickly that it seems like she doesn't say that. There's another way to say what we were. Yeah, what we were, what we were, what we were, what we were. So what? Drop the T. What? So it's just w and especially if you reduce that all the way to like a true schwa. What. And then the W is not even fully formed. It's just it's a lazy W. What. Then we have another W and an E. But when if we're speaking really, really quickly, it actually might kind of come out more as like an I if you're speaking really, really quickly. You don't want to normally do that with we. In the contraction we're, you can reduce it to like where with an I as okay, because ear and ear are like it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. But you don't want to do that for we unless you're speaking really quickly, like in this case. So we have like what, we, okay, super fast, and then were. So it's another W plus the what we were, what we were, what we were. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. That's what we were talking about. What we were. That's what we were talking about. What we were. And then because we're speaking so quickly, we're kind of like just barely leaving that lazy W and going right back into it. And so it's like, so it can be really hard to hear. If there's something else the speaker did, I'd have to listen specifically to what they did. But just off the top of my head, like that's probably how we would say that really quickly, and that's probably what they did. So anyway, can what about that come out as what about that? Yeah, the TH in that being a normal voiced TH, not a dental D, and the T in what and about being fully dropped. What about that? What about that? Yeah. So remember the TH being dental, being a dental T or D or a regular TH voice or voiceless. That does not matter. Like that's not affected by anything else. There are things that can make it maybe more likely to make it the dental version, but that's an independent little range of itself. With what and about. I see there's also the no T on about. So what about that? Yeah. What about, you can even drop the and about. What about that? What about that? What about that? What about that? No problem. If you're speaking quickly, it can maybe sound a little bit informal, kind of, if you drop the and about. But yeah, that's perfectly possible. Very fine, very normal. Almost all teachers telling us not to translate into English in our mind as if it is completely wrong, but actually why? Okay, good question. Very good question. Sorry, it took me a second to get here. I apologize. I'm 13 minutes behind. But this is a very good question. So, should you not translate to English in your head? I wouldn't put a value judgment on it. I wouldn't say you should or shouldn't. It's more about something like, oh, you should avoid that. That's a bad thing. Don't translate. Like, come on. And I don't think most teachers are, trying to say it that way, but it's more about like you don't want to have to translate in your head, right? It slows you down. And that's really the big reason. It slows you down, right? If you have to filter everything through your native language, which you can get really fast at, right? That's sort of the hard, slow way, and it's the way most people go through it. Like they'll practice speaking, and everything's very slow. They have to like translate it, and like, oh, what's that word? Oh yeah, okay, that word's that word, and it's very slow at first. And as you get maybe a little bit better at speaking, you get a little bit easier putting it together. If you're always thinking in your native language first, and then it comes out in English, there's like a delay, right? Where for me, English is my language, right? You in your native language, that's your language. It just happens. Like you have a thought and it comes out, right? That's ideally, you don't have to develop that, right? It's not a requirement, but that's kind of the goal for a lot of people. They want to be able to think in English. They want to be able to just like effortlessly speak and, this and that. If you don't care that it takes you an extra half a second to think in your native language before it comes out in English, don't worry about it. That's your choice. And if you speak enough, which is going to have to be a lot, but if you speak enough over a long enough period of time, it will probably either completely go away or become so small that it's like super, super, super fast. It doesn't really matter anymore. There are ways around that where you can directly start thinking in English. And part of that is like the logic of prepositions, learning to feel the prepositions the way that a native feels them, because of the connections in the subconscious mind. And that's the whole logic of preposition approach, is hacking into that using logic so you can build the feeling directly. That's also the key to learning phrasal verbs, right? You don't have to try to learn phrasal verbs if you use the logic of prepositions, because you'll naturally start to create phrasal verbs that you've never heard before. I've had that happen with several students. So if you try to feel the language instead of translate the language, that's the real secret hack. And I'm going to have, over time, I'm going to be talking about prepositions, verbs, different parts of grammar, different things. That's going to be sort of like a big part of maybe phase 2 of the channel. The pronunciation is just like phase 1 of the channel. I know a lot of you think this is a pronunciation channel. It's not a pronunciation channel. I just started there because it's the single most important part of the entire language. Riddick, another question. Should I stress all content words? Because I think we usually stress content words, but not all the time. You were very close. I usually say like this: I want to go on beach. So here we stress go as well. Yeah, absolutely. You want to stress want, you want to stress go, but beach needs to be a little bit more stressed, just a little. It's not like I want to go to the beach. Okay, then you're adding extra focus to it, to emphasize, like, oh, I don't want to go to the store, I want to go to the beach. Okay, that's a special reason. So you don't want to overdo it, but it does need to stand out a little bit more than want and go. It's not that want and go aren't stressed magically, and that wouldn't make any sense. And I think maybe this is why a lot of teachers like don't specifically mention it, because they subconsciously probably assume like, well, we talked about word stress, so of course the learner, and again, I think it's subconscious. They don't consciously realize that they're doing this, but they're probably subconsciously thinking, well, we talked about word stress, so of course the learner isn't going to assume that when we have a sentence that all of a sudden what was stressed becomes unstressed and it's just this one word that's stressed, because that wouldn't make any sense. Why would we talk about word stress at all? But my experience is that usually the more explicit you are, the more that you actually say this is this, or if you start skipping details and assuming things, students get lost, or they come to like false conclusions. They get confused. So yeah. So want to stress go, stress beach is also stress, but a little bit more than want and go. Now you say, should I stress all the content words? So a content word by definition means that it will be stressed. It's part of what a content word means. The only trick there is, remember, that applies to one syllable content words. So if it's just one syllable and it's a content word, it's stressed, guaranteed. If it's one syllable and it's not a content word, then if you have a special reason to stress it, it can be stressed, but usually it's not going to be stressed. As I said earlier, if there's more than one syllable, it doesn't matter what kind of word it is. So let's say if we have about, which is a preposition. So that's a function word. So it shouldn't be stressed, right? Well, no, because if I do that, I would have to say like about. I'm trying to unstress both syllables, but English doesn't work that way. Any word, whether it's a content word or function word, if it has 2 or more syllables, one of those syllables is going to be stressed. So if we put about into a sentence, so if I say, I think about him a lot. Okay, so we have think, and I think lot would also be a content word, should be. And then with about, it's a preposition, but it's 2 syllables. All the other words are 1 syllable, right? So the bout is still stressed compared to the it can't be at the same level as the or if about him, it's not going to be at the same level as him. So there will still be stress there. Okay, so I think about him a lot. I think about him a lot. Think about him a lot. Think about them a lot. Okay. Da, 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 da. Now, you could argue, we could start splitting hairs and say, like, okay, well, because about isn't a function or isn't a content word, sure, the second syllable is stressed, but it's not going to be quite as stressed as an actual content word. And so we have like these, like the focus stress, and then the unfocused content word stress, and then the stress syllable and a function word stress. But that kind of just it gets too nuanced. There's no reason to go to that level. It just makes things unnecessarily complicated. So anytime you have a stress syllable in a sentence, I don't care if it's a function word or content word, if you have a stress syllable in a sentence, it needs to be stressed. Okay. But it can't stand out. It can't be quite as stressed as whatever the focus word is, whether that's the last word, or you can make I the focus word. I want to go to the beach. Okay. Now, I is the single most stressed word there, even though it's a function word, because I'm clarifying, I'm really pointing out me, not somebody else. Okay. But anyway, point is that focus word stands out the most, and then any other syllable that gets stress, content word or not, still needs to have that stress at the sentence level. So that means every single time you're speaking at a normal pace, you do the slightly awkward M to N transition. Is that back to I'm not? No, it's a dynamic range. I'm not. I think I said it was for fast speech, didn't I? I'm not. I'm not doing that. Yeah, they can work in normals. It's on the faster end of normal. I'm not doing that. See, I can still close into the N, like I'm, and then bring my tongue up to the N. And then when I release the M, I also release the N, and that'll create a slightly different thing because the N is still there. But you could just close into the M and not have to like go into the N unless you're speaking much more clearly. So it's two possibilities. The N could be there or not. What about reduction in unstressed words? Pitch moment. I don't know what pitch moment means. Does it go down as well, like downstairs? Yeah, some people talk about like a stairway, and I see the use in that, but I don't really look at things that way usually. So the pitch for unstressed words and reductions, because there are some reductions that can happen in stressed words. They're usually super common words, like get can reduce to get, when can reduce to win. It's usually ed to it seems, but usually the reductions will happen in an unstressed syllable. But regardless, if it's an unstressed syllable, you just need to make that pitch lower. Okay, so and it's relative, right? So it's not like if I say like about, it's not like I'm saying about. Like, no, that's way too much, right? So it I know, depending on the language you're coming from, it can be a strange thing at first, but when you make things shorter, quieter, and lower in pitch, it all kind of goes together. It's like you just make everything small. The volume goes down, the length of the sound goes down, whether it's reduced or not, and then the pitch goes down. It all goes down together. See, it sounds a little bit lower. If I say bout, the kind of pitch kind of raises. There's also an arc through the word. Okay, I've talked about that before. So yeah, it's a dynamic contrast. You don't want to have it like be way down here, up here, like have this way down here and then have this up here. You don't have to worry about staircases or things like that. It's just keep it relative. Okay, make it small and quiet. Again, I can't say naturally because it depends on how your native language works, but from my perspective, at least, it naturally happens where they all kind of go together. So if you can figure out, like, if you can't adjust your pitch very well consciously, you have to figure out how to do that first, and then just make sure if it's unstressed that it doesn't sound as clear and as high, right? So it's not it's not and then it's not bout, it's bout. So it all sort of expands and contracts together, right? Including the pitch. So far behind. I think I already answered that, didn't I? Yeah. Remember, guys, I'm going in order, as I said before. If you repeat questions, that doesn't help anything. Like, I'm not going to see it unless you make it a super chat. If you do make it a super chat and I don't see it, then that's a technical problem, and I apologize for that. But King Lion, Dog Fluent American, Dog Fluent American. Okay. I wouldn't put it that way. That seems a bit extreme, but yeah. As I said, it's not something you have to do. Just just airing everybody's conversations. Yeah, skip ahead. I think this was related to what I was talking about, though. So just because a word is a content word, it isn't necessarily going to be stressed. Context is always the most important thing. See, that I would disagree with that. Context is the most important thing, but context affects the attentional intonation. It affects the shifting of the focus word. I love to see Americans make these mistakes. It makes you feel like you're not alone. Which mistakes? Colorado. Well, there's. I mean, I kind of tried to did it. Can't speak. I tried to do it more clearly, like Colorado. So I actually did like a regular L, Colorado. What we'd probably do is the dark L, what I call the half L vowel. All. Okay, I don't know where the camera is. Instead of color. So you saw my tongue come up a little bit, but I didn't close all the way. Colorado. It's probably the most common way that most people are going to say it. If you do an L, it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Like if you close it. I came up with accidentally rather than accidentally. You can also do that. I mean, you can keep the eh. We're just like, I was trying to find like what's the most reduced, like what can we throw out and modify. But yeah, you can keep the eh there as well. That's fine. What you came up with, there are lots of ways to do this. Yeah. Yep. Even function words can get stressed. Yes, they can. Often to convey more emotion or clarify. This I completely agree with. Yes. Alan is here. Welcome, Alan. As you wait patiently 20 minutes for me to acknowledge your existence. Also, I promise pronouncing this stopped T or whatever it's called in should we get going. Do you know how do I fix that? Yeah, it should be a stop T. Get going. Well, there's actually a couple things you could do here because there is another stop sound after it, particularly the G. So there's like the K and G are back here. If you stop the T, you can close into the T or you cannot close into the T. For the D, you have to close into the D, but for the T, you can actually just do a glottal stop and we'll interpret it as a stop T. Now, the G and K are kind of in the same neighborhood compared to, say, this part of the mouth. But if there's another stop sound after the T, does that work with the P? Get people. Yeah. So it could be a P. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, there's another stop sign after the T. One option, especially if you're speaking really quickly, it doesn't have to be super quickly, but especially if you're speaking quickly, you can drop the T. You actually don't have to stop. You can say, get going. Let's get going. Perfectly fine. If I say get people, get people. I have to go get people. Perfectly fine. The way that you stop the T, as I said, the main way is you have to close the glottis. So, somewhere in here. And I've talked about that before. I don't know if you've seen my lesson on the 4 T's of American English. You can definitely check that out. Actually, I think I introduced it in the K lesson because I find it easier to figure out how to do it with K based on Japanese, because Japanese also has glottal stop. So if Japanese has 2 Ks together, or if they have 1 K together, which I don't know if this is actual Japanese, it's just the example I always use because I thought of it randomly. Hoka. hoka, hoka. So it's just k, right? There's just a K sound. If there's two Ks, then it wouldn't be hoka. It would be hoka, hoka, hoka. So they're closing into the K, but they're holding it. And part of that is you're feeling what it's like to sort of stop that breath and hold it there for a second. Hoka, hoka, hoka. Okay. Now, Japanese may not necessarily use an exact glottal stop, but they stop it for sure. I think they also do the glottis, but that might be an English bias. Anyway, point is, once you can sort of get used to how that feels, then you can try to like close off your throat. So if you're trying to breathe out, you say like, not like bringing the tongue up, just from the throat. What you're doing is you're closing your glottis. Okay. Now let's say you say the word what. So instead of saying what, you don't even have to go into the T. Just say woo, and then close. What, 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 what. Now here when I'm saying what, I'm not breathing out the same as all right. But that can help you kind of feel it. And then you can figure out, okay, it feels that way. Let me put it at the end of a word. So we say get going, get going, get going. So there you go. How can I fix that? Yeah. I'm going to be talking about that in the mouth posture course in group 2. We talk about the main T in group 1. We're going to talk about the like the flap D, the stop T, stop T, all that in group 2. You can't believe I read 3 famous coaches books, but got nothing. And I about to send you a message, then thought why I don't hear. Oh, got it. Yeah. And that was that Fluent American. Yeah, especially if they're pronunciation books. Like, I know that they can be useful, but the idea of a book about pronunciation to me is almost like it just doesn't make any sense. And if it comes with like an audio reference material, that's okay, but it's weird because sounds are auditory, so you can't hear them in a book. Here I am with Hurricane Julia. Yeah, stay safe. That sucks. Notice got your messages. Yes, I hope so. Yes. Thoughts and prayers. Half these comments just aren't even directed at me. How function words to stress, but I'm confused in general stress. Yeah. Well, as I said, if it's stressed, stress it, but make the focus more stressed. It's as simple as that. That's like the simplest. And then, of course, you have to make the unstress, shorter required. Make sure that the unstressed are also unstressed. Don't let them be sort of neutral flat. But so it's like da, da, da. And then that last da is just the focus word. So everything is doing this until you hit the focus word, right? That's like the simplest way that I can explain it. In Where Is There a Faster Way? How fast do you have to be speaking for it to be okay for you to go to Where Is There a Faster Way? I don't know why you write you are. It's just Where's there a faster way? Well, the Z and is would also take over the TH. We would probably contract where and is, so the I would disappear. So we're going to go, if you're speaking quickly, you can reduce where to were. It's a little extreme, but it can happen. So you werzer. And then werzer faster way. Yeah. So the S and the T, right? Fast. You don't have to say the T. In the middle of a word, you also don't have to say the T. If you're speaking more quickly, faster. It's faster. If you're speaking not fast, like say it's like normal, slower, normal, enunciating, you want that T, but in fast speech, you can still drop it. Faster way. Yeah. So where's there a faster way? Where's there a faster way? Yeah. And is there for there even a thing? Where's there? Yeah. Yeah. Just like where can potentially be reduced to were, there can potentially reduced to there. But again, fast speech only. Please pronounce male, feel, oil, all. Okay. Male, feel, oil, all. Male, feel, oil, all. How fast do you have to be speaking for? I have to find where to be able to be reduced down to. Find where. I have to find where. I have to find where I put it. I have to find where I put it. This one, even if I'm speaking not super clearly, but not super fast, it sounds okay. My recommendation when we're talking about the partial nasalization stuff, it's not accurate. When we're talking about partial nasalization and dropping things, like the N, I wouldn't worry about how slowly you can do it. I would just say the faster end of normal and into super fast, you're fine. Use it there. I mean, you can still not do that. You can still include the N in faster speed speech, but don't worry about like, oh, how slow can I go? Like, just if you're speaking more slowly, just say a little more clearly. Like, that would just be the easy thing. The word of there sounds like iv. Wait, what? Where? I don't know what we're talking about. And does the word not have to be partially nasalized when you go, I'm not. Did we already talk about that? Yeah, I was saying the reason why we can do that, like if you say I'm not, that doesn't work. Like if there's no nasalization on the vowel, it's because of the partial nasalization on the vowel, which usually that happens when there's an N or M after it. This is sort of a special case. And it's also partially because there's that M there, and so an M-N combination and it's super common. There's probably like a list of reasons of why this one happens to work, even though it might not usually. But you have to partially nasalize the vowel. Yeah. If you don't, it's just broken English. If you say I'm not going, that doesn't make any sense. Here at wait, what? Here. I'm so confused. Okay. Your brain corrected. Fluent American made this mistake. Oh. Yeah, our brains do that. I didn't even catch it. How can you pronounce the dark L without getting your tongue to touch the roof of your mouth? Mouth posture. Like literally, that's might seem like a tongue-in-cheek answer, but literally that's the answer. Like you need your jaw open enough, you need this to be down and open enough. That's going to give you the space. If you don't have that space from the jaw and from here, you're not going to get it right. That being said, provided that you do have the right mouth posture and you have that central pressure, center of gravity, the dark L is going to be slightly down in the middle, mostly back, where the center of gravity is mostly down, slightly back. There's just a little shift between them. Okay. And then you need to keep the back of the tongue in place as you sort of push back into it a bit. But if you add too much extra tension or you let this sort of raise up or move back, then it's going to cause problems. So it's about sort of refining it to like the least amount of movement possible to produce the sound. Oh. I could do like really clearly, like oh. Taking up a bit more space sounds deeper. But if you want to get it in like the flow of fast speech, you have to sort of like refine that down to like, okay, does it still sound like oh, even if it's not like super clearly full? Just like there's E and then there's E. Like it's still E, it still works. It's just sort of a faster, lazier E sound. Oh, I'm almost caught up. Thank you. Fruzina is here from Budapest. Awesome. New here. Welcome. Sorry, I'm trying to go in order. I see you just commented 2 minutes ago, so I'm not too late on that. But let me know if you have questions. We're probably going to have to wrap up within the next half hour. If we run out of stuff, I'll probably go earlier, but we have about another half hour that we can go. So let me know if you have any questions. Can say healthy and wealthy. Wait, they're always kind of awkward because I want to release the L and then transition to the voiceless TH so there's no bumpy sound between the two. Okay, what? Okay, so well, there's two things here. How do you even get a bumpy sound? Hel- hel- healthy. Oh, so like healthy, something like that. That's all I can imagine you mean by bumpy sound. Okay, there's 3 ways to do this. Number 1, you do an L, which tends to have the tongue pulled in a little bit on the sides up here. Okay, la. You can be touching the teeth. You cannot be touching the teeth. It doesn't matter. La. Okay. Now from there, oof. So I just sort of let it flatten a little bit, and I'm still touching, but I'm letting the sound. So my tongue is like up here. Because remember, the TH can happen from anywhere behind the teeth here. Okay. So the L is here. I'm just going to go ahead and do it around the teeth. And then I let it, instead of being more narrow, a little tighter, I'll let it sort of flatten out a bit, still keeping contact. So the TH isn't going to flow through here like it usually does. It flows around the tongue. And then I might loosen up just a little bit. So you might get a little bit of air through there, but it mostly stays where it is. It's not like I'm pulling it off and then, trying to get more space there. Healthy. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to do a dental T. Healthy. So you already healthy. You actually just put the L into that dental position. It's fine. Healthy. Okay. The third way, which would probably be the most common way. I don't know. They're all pretty common, but to do the half L vowel, the dark L, healthy. So now you have the L here, hell, and then you can go to the TH, the. You can even do the dental, healthy. Okay. So multiple ways. Yeah. By the way, when your tongue is relaxed, it's behind your teeth. That is a very vague question. Any news posture wise? I'm gonna come to that in a second. So when your tongue is relaxed, it's behind your teeth. Well, I mean, when my tongue is in my mouth, it's behind my teeth. Doesn't matter if it's relaxed or not. I think you probably mean like directly behind the teeth. In which case, I would say maybe for the bottom teeth, sure. For the top teeth, no. Then again, I have a very slight underbite. Is it underbite or overbite? Underbite. Like, anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. But no, you don't. It's relatively such a small difference, but it makes a big difference. If your tongue is pushed forward from the back, like most languages seem to do, then what feels relaxed for you, you're going to be right here next to the teeth. And that sounds to me like what you're describing. If the tongue isn't pushed forward, things are a bit more open, then it's not going to be right there by the teeth. It's going to be back a little bit. The tip of my tongue can sort of rest here, like touching where the bottom teeth go into the gums, and that's fine. That's very normal. But I wouldn't say that like, it's not like my tongue isn't like right here. And it's like this. Hey, it kind of disappears. That's relaxed. Okay. So it should go more like into the mouth, I would probably say. I already did that one. Do everybody makes mistakes? Yeah, of course. Duh. Yeah, that's one reason why I encourage you guys to make mistakes, because now there's some mistakes that like a native would just never make, unless, I mean, we might get wires crossed or something. But usually the mistakes we make are not the same kind of mistakes you guys would make, because like we already have the grammar, right? And you coming from a different grammar, like you might actually like mix up the word order or something in a way that we would never do. Um, but yeah, I mean, the brain is not a machine. So mistakes happen. That's one reason why they're not a big deal. Like, okay, and half the time we don't even correct our mistakes. The other person understands what we meant. So that happens in your native language too. And use posture wise. So yeah, as Abdullah said, read the community section. I'm trying to give you guys updates on that as we go. So I can quickly recap that here. Trying to do the phase 0 ear training lesson. My most recent update that I made about that yesterday fell through. I thought I found a good way, recorded it, wasted a few more hours, and decided I had to redo it in a different way. Now I think I got it. It's actually proving very difficult to figure out like the best, most efficient way to do this, because yeah, especially without the video being like an hour long. But I'm pretty sure I got it. I just have to re-record it and edit it. So that's coming. That's going to be the next thing on the mouth posture. And then I'm hoping I think I said by the end of, not next week, but the week after that, I hope to have the phase 2 group 1 lesson done, which includes e, a, ah, k, g, n, t, d, n, p, b, m, and h, the H sound. It's a massive lesson. Like I expect it to be at least 30 minutes, if not an hour. It's going to be a very, very big lesson. And that's me trying to cut it down and make it as efficient as possible. So it's coming. It's coming. I think there's one more thing with mouth posture. Oh yeah, I've already planned out the phase 1 ear training posture lesson as well, but that's going to come after I make the phase 2 lesson. And then I have a couple other lessons that are coming in the interim as well, so that aren't mouth posture related. How can I post? I don't know what you mean. I cannot post questions for some reason. I just joined. Wait, what? You mean here in the stream? Or I don't, like, were they not going through and now they're going through and I see them? I don't know. Please clarify. If it's long, the more the merrier. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people talk about like, oh, you need to make long videos, you need to make short videos. It's like, no, you need to make a video as long as is required to provide the information and the value that you're trying to provide. Problem is, cutting out, making it interesting, right? Number one, but also cutting out, rambling, things like that. So, and I'm trying to get a lot better at that, but some things are just gonna be long, like I could easily like just make sort of like a lesson on every single sound for the mouth posture, just like it is individual videos, but I don't necessarily want to do that. Like, maybe I might offer that as like an option at some point, but I think I'm going to do that. There's group 1, that's one whole lesson. Group 2, there's one whole lesson. And there's going to be timestamps so you guys can find what you need or whatever. So should be fine. How would you pronounce Mary, Mary, Mary? The typical question. Exactly the same. Most Americans have what is called the Mary, Mary, Mary merger. There are some Americans that don't. And apparently there are even some Americans that are unmerging, which is an interesting thing. But most Americans have the Mary, Mary, Mary merger, where these are pronounced all the same. So many Americans don't have R. There's no R colored A. Some of us do. Many of us don't, including myself. I don't. So it's plus air. Okay, Mary, Mary, Mary. It's all the same. In fact, I'm not even completely sure why the first one and the third one are in the same list. I get maybe there are people who pronounce these three completely differently. To me, I would assume that M-A-R-R-Y and M-A-R-Y would be pronounced exactly the same. Of course, I pronounce all of these the same, and that might be why I assume that, but I don't see how those could be any different, other than the A and E difference. Yeah, so make your life easy. Just pronounce air. It'll sound perfectly natural, normal, neutral. Could you please demonstrate the transition of the reduction to and the? Okay. So well, the T, I'll just keep it as a regular T, like a weak version of the T, because the T in two is very easy to change based on the sound before it. It might become a T, or it might become a D, might become a flap D. Sometimes may even disappear like in wanna. But we'll ignore that part and we'll just reduce two to ta. So ta and the. Ta the. So ta. So we're going ta. So I'm going see, if you don't have the mouth posture, this is probably gonna be really hard to do because you're just not in place. If your tongue is pushed forward and you're trying to do like ta ta ta, it's just not gonna sound right. Okay, not gonna sound right. This is why the mouth posture is so important. If nothing else, like, I mean, if you just want to be understood, that's fine, whatever. But even if you just want to be understood, it's going to help that as well. But like just your tongue being pushed forward. If I just try to speak with my tongue pushed forward like this, everything's kind of out of place. It's kind of hard for me to make my normal sounds. Then I just sound a little bit weird, right? So you don't want to do that. But provided everything is in place, you have more space. Center. This is open. Okay. Ta. The 90% of the th sound is stretching the front of the tongue forward, which you learn how to do in phase 0, more or less. It's just like saying other, to the, other, to the. Okay. Now you can also do a dental D replacement of the th, which is super common. It's not informal. The. So the to the beach, to the beach, to the beach, to the. Okay. So hopefully that helps. I don't know what else to say about that. Oh, you had an example here. I'm horrible at that. Take him to the library. Can you put the tongue out of the teeth or lightly bite when saying to cheat? No, you cannot. Absolutely not in any way. That's not a T sound in any way, shape, or form in English. The T is here. The T doesn't even touch the teeth in English. Okay, I know many languages it does. If you touch the teeth with the T sound or the D sound in English, it's not a T or D. In fact, we're going to interpret that as a TH because, as I said, we have the dental T or D, which in American English, our brains will hear that as a TH sound. But also remember, since you're mentioning sticking the tongue through the teeth, most teachers teach you that the way to make the TH sound is you have to stick the tongue between the teeth. That is absolutely 100% not accurate. Can you do it that way? Yes. Will we do it that way if we're like really emphasizing? Yeah. Could it come out that way? Yeah. But that's probably the least common way to produce a TH sound, and it's not required to make the sound. You don't have to say it. You can say, see? I'm just right here, right behind the teeth. I can even be up here. Okay. I don't understand why teachers teach you push your tongue through the teeth. Like that's literally the least common way to produce it. And it's really easy to mess up too, because if you push down too hard on the tongue, you can't even get the sound. It has to be very, very light. So maybe that's the core part of your problem, is you're just trying to do the TH in a way that natives wouldn't usually do it anyway. So can I take classes with you? Welcome, edu. I don't know, is edu? I assume. Yeah, there should be a link in the description to italki, to my teacher profile. You can make sure you read the description. Now, be careful. I don't teach general English. Do not teach general English. I don't work with kids. I don't work with teenagers. I don't teach general English. I was saying this earlier. I have a logic of preposition course offering. I have a language mentoring or consultation offering, which is more designed for you self-studying, or, like, I don't actually teach you English in that. Or the main thing I do is the pronunciation through mouth posture course, which is still in development. So if none of that sounds appealing to you, I have nothing to offer you. So you can go check that out and make sure you read the descriptions very carefully. You're welcome, Fruzina. I don't know how is it Fruz, like there's a Z and an S. Fruzina, maybe. I don't know. Is there a difference in the pronunciation of the word mother in different regions of the USA? So there's General American, which is an umbrella. Okay, there's not one neutral accent in American English like most sources would lead you to believe. I speak a neutral accent, Western American English, which is a neutral accent. I sound 99% the same as somebody from the North Midlands. And the people from the North Midlands, which that's usually the standard that's taught as like the neutral accent. No, it's an accent. It's a neutral accent. But like they say ah and aw, I just say ah. It's caught merger. Both of those are accents, but they're both generally neutral sounding. Okay, that's the reality of General American English. Now, that being said, pronunciation of a particular word like mother. Okay, so most Americans, the reason it's called General American is because most Americans have a neutral sound, even if there's a little detail here and there that's a little different. So most Americans are going to pronounce this word exactly the same. The only time that I can imagine an American saying this word any differently is if they are if they're not a neutral general American speaker. So if they have a Boston accent and they say maybe something like I don't even know how they would say it, like mother, maybe something like that, where they don't pronounce the R at the end, just like in British English. Or in the South also has a range of accents. They're not all the same. But they generally sound kind of similar to each other compared to General American. So if you're from the South, like if you're from Texas, right? I don't know if this is a perfect Texas accent. I'm just kind of trying to imitate something here. And you say, oh, that's my mother, there. So there's other things going on with the mouth posture and with the formation of certain sounds that's going to make it sound different because that's a Southern accent. If you're from, I think, more like the Louisiana area, they also, I think, drop the at the end. I'm not an expert on, every accent in the South or whatever, but they would say like, oh, my mother. But if we're talking about general American, just neutral accent that most Americans have, this word would be pronounced the same. Now, that being said, there's one other detail. The TH. There's a range of pronunciation for the TH. You can do a lazy TH. You can do a regular TH. You can do a dental D because it's a voice TH. So you might hear different speakers pronounce it differently. You'll even hear the same. You'll hear like me. I could say this word 10 times, and maybe 5 of those times I'll say mother. The other 10 times I'll say mother. Or sorry, 5 times. You know what I meant. Because it's a range. It doesn't matter which one we use. Now, when there's an after the TH, we're actually most likely to use the lazy one, which is just like a not fully formed TH. Mother, almost like the TH isn't there. It'd be hard to hear. Anyway, so if they are a General American speaker and you're still noticing differences, the difference is probably from that TH and the range of pronunciation that it can have. The same speaker will use all 3 of those THs. It's just whichever one comes out. Because it's a range for one sound. I've been learning. Welcome, Uptown JK. I've been learning English for many years, but I still make a lot of mistakes when I speak English, such as articles and plural nouns, or at times whole sentence structures are totally wrong. I wish there was a much more effective way to fix them. Can you give me sound advice? Thank you. You're welcome. Well, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for asking the question and joining us. I do have a solution to this, but I'm not there yet in the channel. um, you can get a taste of it by looking at the logic of preposition lessons. I have a whole book on it. The course is going to be based on the book. But my general approach to grammar is very untraditional, because the traditional approach is you learn these rules, you learn these definitions, you memorize the exceptions, memorize this and that, blah, blah, blah. And that's great if you're just trying to learn about the language. If you're trying to actually understand or especially use the language, that's almost useless. Not completely, because having some of the knowledge is very useful, but it's compared to the amount of benefit you get for all the work that you put into memorizing all those things. It's almost useless, because remember, knowledge is not skill. So you could pass, you could have better grammar knowledge than the average speaker, which, if we're talking about Americans, you just have to study English for like 3 months and you probably have better grammar knowledge than the average American. But that aside, like, you could be able to pass like a C2 level grammar test, right? And have like 0 speaking skills, and even 0 listening skills, because knowledge is not skill. Okay. My approach generally to grammar is hacking into the personality of the language, hacking into the subconscious neural network that a native speaker has, and trying to feel why this preposition is used in this case, why this article is used or not used in this case. Feel I'm trying to think of some other examples. Anyway, you get the point. And I will have more and more content about that in the future as we move on. I've focused a lot on pronunciation up to this point because it's so super important. It's phase 1, is the first core pillar of the channel. And I'm always going to be making pronunciation related content, if nothing else than pronunciation analysis. So there's always going to be that. But as I move more and more forward and I have fewer lessons to make about pronunciation, I'm going to be pivoting more into like the grammar and other areas. So that's coming. That's coming. The advice that I can give you for now, the number one thing overall, regardless of what kind of approach or hacks or whatever you do or don't use, is input. Input, and actually listen to the language, because whether it's grammar or pronunciation, the language will show you all of its secrets if you just pay close enough attention. Okay. You can't just be like listening, and I mean, you could be doing the dishes or something as long as you can focus on the listening, but you can't be like, have it on in the background, right? You want to really listen to the language, and not necessarily in a way that you're studying it, right? But really listen to it, hear what's there, because your brain is going to compensate, right? So you might not catch that article because your brain doesn't think it's important, and it's a super low the or right? So it might be hard to hear. Your brain doesn't think it's important, and you kind of understand what's going on. You still catch the meaning even though you don't catch every little word. So a little bit of ear training. Okay, that's again why I'm focused on pronunciation first, because it affects everything else. Okay, a little bit of ear training. To be able to hear those small details, make sure you're catching all the words, but lots and lots of input that gets the language into you, not the way that your brain is filtering it. Actually get the language into you. You need to be buried in a mountain of input the size of the Himalayas or the size of Mount Everest. You want to just bury yourself in input, as much as possible. Now, it's not always the easiest thing to do, but the more that you can do that, the more constantly you can listen to English. Reading also helps, but especially listening. That's going to be the number one overall thing. Okay. Because that is the slow way to start feeling the language. And if you pay enough attention, eventually over time, you can start feeling things that way. Because you're going to start saying, oh, that doesn't sound right. Right? If you try to say it one way, it's like, yeah. Okay. And that's a good sign when you reach that point. Um, other than that, as I said, I'm gonna have lessons about prepositions and articles and this and that and how to like, exercises to do and stuff. But in the meantime, until I get there, um, if you notice something, like let's say you hear somebody say, uh, I don't know, don't walk in the street because we say in the street. There's a reason we say that. But you might think very, common sensically, you might think, well, why? Well, I would say on, don't walk on the street. Okay. But we don't say on, we say in. Um, and so you hear a native speaker say, don't walk in the street. So number one, right, if it came from a native, well, it has to be right. Maybe there's more than one option. Sometimes there's more than one option. In this case, there's just the one option. You won't know that, but you don't have to know if there's more than one option for this, what I'm going to tell you. You can take that, you notice it, and you ask yourself why. Why are they saying in? And don't just like throw your hands up and say like, oh, why? I don't get it. I don't understand. Okay. Really think about it. Think about like, what could be the reason? What is the spatial, in this case, we're talking about space, right? What is the spatial reality? What is the context of this spatial reality that would in some way make the preposition in work? Because on technically works because a street is a surface. That's why you might choose that. But we don't say that. The reason in this case, I'll go ahead and give you the answer. Right. Just like we say on a mountain, in a valley. Okay. It's kind of the same thing, even though it's not always perfect, but we're on a sidewalk in the street. Sidewalks are usually raised and it creates almost like a little valley. Okay. In addition to that, sidewalks are on the side of the street and then you're on that platform. So you don't walk in the sidewalk. That sounds like you're actually inside the sidewalk. Where in the street, it's a pathway. You walk in a hallway, right? Now you walk on a path. I know it gets confusing, but it's a designated like corridor. There's no walls to it, but it's a designated corridor for cars to travel. Okay. So now, see, that also doesn't make sense because we say on a train track, not in a train track. Okay, but that's because they're actually on top of the tracks. There's nothing to the side that. See, when I try to explain it without going through the book, we run into all these weird exception cases. And that's why some people don't like the approach because it doesn't seem to make sense to them. But trust me, it does make sense. Anyway, the point is that in this particular context is very important. In this particular context, we say in a street because it's a corridor and because you can look at it as like a little valley. Okay. That's the way that I would explain it. There might be other ways to explain it. But the point is that we say in the street, not on the street. That's a fact. Okay. You might sometimes hear someone say on the street, maybe if they're thinking of it that way, and it's a special edge case, but 99.9999999% of the time, you're going to hear somebody say in the street. Okay. And there has to be a reason for that. Okay. You ask most teachers, I'm using prepositions because that's what I'm most familiar with because I wrote a 400-page book on it. But this applies to verbs, articles, noun plurals are a little bit weird because some things don't always work with a logical approach. It is what it is. And I'm going to maybe try to figure out how to tackle that later. But what was I saying? Yeah, with things like prepositions, verbs, like there's a reason why a particular thing works and why a particular thing doesn't work. And if that weren't true, then phrasal verbs wouldn't exist, right? There's a reason why phrasal verb might have more than one meaning, but there's a reason why within the context of the English language, right? It's not general logic. It's the personality of the language. Sometimes it likes and doesn't like certain things. But you can use a logical approach to look at, in this case, why is this happening? Why is this the answer? Why is this what natives say? And if you dig down under the surface, you're going to start finding a whole web of connections in the subconscious mind. It's like there's a bunch of plants, the in plant, the at plant, the to plant, the for plant. But under the surface, some of the roots connect, and there might be more than one option, et cetera, right? So it's a big mess because reality is a mess. There's time, there's space, there's this context, there's that context. But under the surface, there is a reason why we use the words that we use. And you can hack into that. In fact, in the future, at some point, at least for prepositions, if nothing else, because prepositions, like if you learn prepositions right, they're so super powerful because they're like the glue, right? They show the relationship between two things. If you can hack into prepositions, you get a huge win, even though they seem to be a small point. So in the future, I want to discover and read a book about the logic of Spanish prepositions, the logic of German prepositions, the logic of Russian prepositions, the logic of Japanese postpositions, because they actually go after instead of before. And then I believe Mandarin doesn't have any. Those are my main languages I want to learn. And I actually discovered the logic of English prepositions through German when I was learning German like 4 or 5 years ago. It occurred to me that maybe there's logic here. And of course, when I asked my partners about that at the time, they're like, no, there's no logic to it. And I was like, I'm pretty sure there is. And so I set that aside, started exploring English as a native, started thinking of things, trying to find connections. And I actually, I just discovered that this is actually a thing. It's not something in my head. It's a linguistic discovery that I'll probably never get recognized for, which is fine, whatever. This is one letter and one sound in many languages. Okay, so Z and S. Well, not in English. And you also have to be careful with, I see, because we were talking about the name. That's why. Yeah. So, well, I don't know if it's supposed to be a Z or an S then, or maybe it's a blended between the two somehow, like Fruzina, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, be careful in English because S at the end half the time is a Z, like is. Okay, so be careful about that in English, especially if you come from a language where they're actually one sound. I'm running out of time, guys. Fernando's here. Okay, so no more questions. Chig says thank you. You're welcome. You have a good one too. No more questions. I'm going to get to what we have here, and then I'm going to have to go. So can the to in to be pronounced with a dental, we forgot the L there, dental T in fast speech? To the store. Well, the thing is, especially going from to, because to is already right here, and then we're going to. It's possible, but if you're speaking faster, it's actually harder to do the dental here. To the. Like if I'm speaking quickly, it's okay. To the. But if I'm saying like, I'm gonna go to the store, something that's either going to happen and something else is not going to happen, or it's not going to happen because something else is happening. So if I say like, I want to go to the store. Okay, in this case, if I say go to, so I can flap the D, and that actually seems to make it a little easier to do the dental. But again, there's a lazy TH. So go to the, like why go all the way forward into the TH of the dental when you could just do the lazy one? Go to the. It's almost like the TH is not there. Go to the. So, proceed with the TH. What do you think about learning 2 different foreign languages at the same time? I'm afraid to learn English because I'm afraid I'm going to forget my first foreign language, German. Yeah, well, English is a Germanic language, although kind of in name only. It's a hybrid language of Germanic and French/Latin. Well, English is quite similar to German. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. The U.S. government puts they categorize the difficulty of languages for English speakers who want to learn foreign languages. Spanish and French are category 1. German is category 1.5. It's the only language in 1.5. It's not in 2 because it's not that different and that difficult compared to like a category 2 language. But it's actually like learning Spanish or French for us would be relatively easier than German. And it's because of all the French and Latin influence on the language. So anyway, that aside, there's a trick here. This is a common question. Lots of polyglots have answered this question. They give slightly different answers, but um, I think what a lot of people, or what a lot of polyglots would say, and what I would agree with, is it depends on how good your first foreign language is, right? So if you're German, and that includes, I would include that to be like, because usually speaking is the weakest skill, right? So that would be like the lowest common denominator. So maybe you have a lot of grammar knowledge, maybe you can understand pretty easily, but if your speaking skill is, say, upper intermediate, okay, it doesn't have to be advanced, upper intermediate, where you're conversational, maybe you're not perfect, but you're conversational, you can speak relatively easily, okay, your German is probably solid, okay, and you can learn another language. There's not really going to be a problem with that. Now, I would either maintain the German a little bit on the side, or periodically, spend a little more time with German. Like, say you're mostly focused on English, and then you have maybe like a week in German or a few days in German or something that's a bit more focused on that, to kind of like keep it fresh. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it, but point is, like, keep contact with German while you're doing the English, and you won't really have to worry about losing it too much. If your German speaking is lower intermediate or below, which I assume it's not going to be any lower than that, but if it's not upper intermediate or higher, I don't recommend trying to learn another language. You want to get your German solid enough first. But otherwise, it's a big problem, because most people, they're not necessarily afraid of losing the first one. They're afraid of having problems with the second one, because a lot of people want to learn like 2 or 3 languages at the same time. And that's generally not recommended if you're starting them at the same time. But if this one's here, you can start this one. That's fine. It's usually not going to cause many problems. And English and German are actually probably different enough that you're not. It's not like, say, if you were like learning Spanish and then you decide to learn Portuguese. Like, even if my Spanish is here and my Portuguese is here, probably there's not going to be much of a problem, but it could start having some sort of weird impact where, like, as I'm speaking Spanish, now the Portuguese, which often they're the same and they're pronounced almost the same, but maybe like the Portuguese comes into my brain, instead of like casa, I say casa or something like that. I don't know. So, but it would be a minor problem as your brain like sorts out the details. I wouldn't worry about it. That's the point. Okay, so hi, just starting the math posture videos here. I've been searching. Well, yes, welcome. I've been searching for something like that for some time. It's not how pronunciation is normally taught. I know. And one of my goals here is, one of my long-term goals, I doubt this will ever happen, but if I have my way, I'm going to completely change the role of pronunciation in the language teaching industry, or at least the English teaching industry, if nothing else. I doubt that'll ever happen, but that would be nice. And anyway, yeah, mouth posture. I'm more and more convinced that mouth posture is, like, if you don't have the right mouth posture, you can't sound native. It's impossible. Like, that's the conclusion I'm coming to more and more and more. And some of my I have like 2 or 3 really advanced mouth posture students that are like on the leading edge of the course. And they agree with me that, like, based on their own experience, like, if you don't have the right mouth posture, you can't sound like a native. It's impossible. Now, that being said, right, there are plenty of people who have a perfect, like, they can sound native like, or like close to a native or native, and never have heard the concept of mouth posture. And my theory about that is, especially if they have some talent, it's not necessarily required, but especially if they have some talent, if they're mimicking things correctly, they're actually adjusting the mouth posture without realizing it. Because if you try to do like ah, but you're really close to, and you say like ah, 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 somebody who is shadowing properly, really paying attention, and again, especially if they have some talent, they're going to be able to notice that, even though they don't notice, oh yeah, my posture in English is here and in this language is here, and blah blah blah. Like, No, they're not going to be consciously thinking that necessarily, but they're going to be able to say, "Oh, okay, I noticed there's this ah, ah, it doesn't sound right. So how can I adjust it to make it sound better? Ah, ah, ah." And things will align. Okay. And that doesn't just magically work for everybody. The mouth posture course is sort of like an explicit, formalized step-by-step way to say, this is the mouth posture of American English. This is how you can build it step by step. But my theory is that if someone never heard about mouth posture or didn't specifically try to build the mouth posture and they still sound like a native, I feel 100% certain that they ended up building the mouth posture in the process without realizing it. Like there's no way that can't be true. Thank you, Randy. Yeah, I already got that one. By the way, I sent some sound audios for analysis. Hope you get to hear them if I get no analysis. Yeah. So, quick note about that. So the I'm going to be contacting the support for my website email because I keep getting these messages saying like message delivery failed. So I may not respond to like every single message you guys send me because there may not be a need for it. But if you send me a recording, I will send you a message saying received. The problem is that some of those emails aren't going through. So I've had several of you message me again and say, "Hey, I sent you a recording. I just want to make sure you got it." And I sent a message back to you before that saying I received it, but apparently you didn't get the message. So there's something going on with my email system, and hopefully I can get that fixed. So I mean, if you don't get the email, you don't know if I actually received it. And it is what it is. But I don't seem to have problems because like worst case scenario, like if you don't hear from me in like say like 2 or 3 days, you can like jump on a YouTube comment and be like, "Hey, did you get my email?" Like whatever. And maybe I didn't get it, but most likely I got it and the message I sent back just didn't go through. Thank you so much for the answers. No problem. You're welcome. Kyoto's here. Welcome. Just arrived. Well, it's unfortunate because I'm actually over time and I need to leave. So I'm just trying to finish up here. People keep asking questions. Fernando is also here. Only because I'm over time. Hello, Fernando. Thanks. I'll keep your advice in mind and I'm looking forward to watching your next live stream. No problem. Hope to have you here next week. Thanks for answers in your time. No problem. Fernando says hi. If there's something I learned these last 4 years and throughout my whole life, dear Josh, is that anything is possible when you want to, but you've got to put a lot of work into it. On it. See, my brain corrected that. Work into it. Yeah, we do say work on. Like you work on a book, you work on something when you're creating it, right? But we put something into something else. Okay. This is part of the problem with prepositions because work on does exist, but the preposition isn't being determined by work here. It's being determined by put something into something. That's where things get a little confusing, right? So, and that's part of where the logic of prepositions can also help but it's a process. Now you know, right? It is a process. There's always going to be some sort of process. Anyway, I completely agree with that. Very much. Yes. Very, very much. And you're already changing the industry. I would hope so. I know that there are at least 2 other teachers who are aware of me because, and the heart. Yes, I appreciate that as well. Fluent American, obviously, we've already even collabed. And then I think Dawn Peacock, she commented on some of my videos. We had a little exchange. There might be some other teachers because I'm sure there's probably some students who watch my videos and then they have like another teacher that they like and they're like, "Hey, what do you think about this video from this English X guy?" So there's probably other people that know about me and I just don't know about it. And probably some of them who disagree with me because I disagree with how they teach, but that's okay. I don't know. I'm just doing my thing, teaching you guys the best way I know how. So anyway, I have to go. So I'm going to do that. And thank you guys for coming. We'll be here next week again, as usual. I'm going to try to get up the content. I know I keep saying phaser ear training lesson. It's going to be up. It's going to be up. It's going to be up. Keep running into problems with it. Hopefully today. Today might be the day. So it's coming. Just I'm working on it. But anyway, I will see you guys next week, and make sure to bring your questions by King Lion. Yes, as well. I'll see you guys next time. We love it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Well, yeah, good. That's how you got here. For the people who got here a little late, sorry. I mean, I have to go. So yeah, get here earlier. Okay, so I have to end. Bye bye.